The Custer County Board of County Commissioners meeting will come to order. Let the record show today is March 29th, 2019. The time is 9:00 a.m. I've asked Miss Mary Ellen Lesage if she would do the honor of leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate that. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Madam Secretary, will you call the roll, please? Sorry, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. I
You're
will do
welcome.
that. Commissioner Fowler.
Present.
Commissioner Candace.
Here.
Commissioner Prince.
Here.
Attorney Clint Smith.
Present.
And Clerk to the Board Kelly Camper present.
Thank you, ma'am. I almost think, a round of applause after you say attorney, but I don't know, I just want to go, yeah.
Nice tie, Clint.
Throw money, please.
Throw money.
That's what we respond to.
That is what we respond to, isn't it?
You know, it was so cold the other day, Clint had his hands in his own pocket.
Pocket. Oh, that's so old.
Yeah, I know.
Dare we get started on that?
Pretty messy.
Now top that one. No, I know you can.
I've got a whole book of them right here.
And Wayne Rotary would say, well, at least it's clean.
Yes, that's right. Amendments to the agenda, gentlemen. Commissioner Kenda?
No.
Nor do I. Commissioner Prince?
I would, we received a letter from Terry Skanga from the Upper Arkansas. I don't know if it's really an agenda addition, but it's beyond the scope of the water rights attorney, so I would like to discuss that letter during that, if it's acceptable.
Okay, is that in the form of a motion, sir?
There is a motion, sir. I move that we review the Skanga letter at the time we discussed the legal counsel for water rights.
Okay. I'll second that. Been moved and seconded to consider the letter from Upper Arkansas Water Conservancy District during consideration of counsel for water rights. Discussion. And to be technically correct, it was an email. Is that right?
It was an email, a letter.
It was an actual
I saw it as
letter,
an email, but it's a
but
letter.
it was emailed to us as, correct, it was an email but a letter.
We're probably going to send a hard copy.
Come in.
Probably.
How are you?
Morning.
Good morning. Further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor of amending the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay. Motion carries. We will bring that topic up under the last item of business on the agenda today. Further amendments to the agenda?
No, sir.
Hearing none, we will move on. We do not have any minutes to approve, so we'll move to audience introductions. Ms. Jackie, before we start, I might just ask if you would speak relatively loudly and clearly, because our clerk to the board will record those names as you introduce yourselves, correct?
Jackie Bubis for the Sentinel.
How do you spell that?
G-E-G-G-I, with an I.
Go ahead.
Leslie Caldwell.
Just go back there.
Jenny Sullivan.
Good morning.
Tom Sullivan.
Good morning.
Wilson Jarvis.
Oh,
Jeff Uthier, U.S. Forest Service.
Destiny Chapman, U.S. Forest Service. Peggy Knight.
Joe Knight.
okay. Yes, sir.
Al Leslie.
Holly Miller.
Mary Ellen Lesage.
Charles Proctor, Wayne Ewing, Wet Mountain Tribune.
Shannon Proctor.
Michael Meske.
Welcome.
Got spelling on the last one?
Yep. I only am missing Mr. Chapman's first name.
Miss Chapman?
Destiny.
Yeah, there. Destiny.
Destiny,
Yes.
yes. Sorry, that's okay.
And I wish I had $1 for every time somebody mispronounced Uthier, Uthour. Yeah. And sir, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Eric with ECV, Ecolampus Vitus.
Okay. Yeah, nice to see you. Thanks for being here.
There's more coming.
All right, hello, sir. How are you?
I'm running a little late today.
That's okay, no problem. I'm sorry we're kind of out of room. Would you introduce yourself, sir?
Stan Robinson, ECB.
Thank you.
What's your first name?
Stan.
Stan Robinson?
Yes, ma'am.
E. Clampus Vitus. We will have a conversation about that later on. Nice to have you gentlemen here. Thank you all. Welcome. Nice to have you. Appreciate it. Commissioner items. Commissioner Prince, would you care to begin, sir?
I'd be happy to, thank you. Our last meeting was in Wetmore. Since then, I attended the strategic plan adoption work, meeting on the 21st. Later that afternoon, we discussed the RFP, the questions that we would ask for our courthouse architect. I met the next morning with Terry Gulliver, who is a hydrologist concerning water in the valley. I also met on Monday with the Upper Arkansas Area Council of Government in Colorado Springs. That was the CDOT quarterly meeting. It was wonderful. I gave them kudos for the 2 signs that they put up by Rosita Road and Highway 69 South. They are going to come to us probably in April, towards the end of April, to discuss 3 options they have for making that intersection safer. I reiterated to them that we really would like that berm lowered if it's possible, and that the county would certainly entertain being involved in its equipment to help lower that. At 5 o'clock that evening, we had a BOCC workshop, which of course I attended.
It was 3 o'clock, sir.
3 o'clock.
If you're talking about the water.
I should have put my glasses on. It was 3 o'clock. Thank you. Next morning, we spent the next day, we spent the entire day listening to proposals from the 5 companies for the strategic plan. No, sorry, I said that wrong. The architects for the new Justice Center. All 5 of them were just excellent, and I was very pleased with the outcome of that. Other than that, I didn't do anything.
Then when did you
That's
rest?
what I've been up to for the last 1 week.
Then he rested for a day.
And to your credit, sir, you've done all that without ever going home.
There's truth to that.
Okay.
There's truth to that.
The mud season.
Bluebirds are chirping, the
Explain now
mud's
what it
melting.
is.
No, we'll leave it to that, because I think that sounds pretty Western. I've done all that and never made it home.
And that was the truth.
Commissioner Campbell?
Okay, similar, but so it makes it easier for me. Yeah, that Justice Center meeting was very good, and the RFP review was good. I'm anxious to see what the team came up with today. I guess that's what we're doing.
We'll vote on it a little later.
And we'll vote on it. You'll get a chance to hear about that. I met also with the town of Silver Cliff trustees, a couple of them, on their interest in Silver Cliff is hiring somebody to discuss broadband hardwire into Silver Cliff and West Cliff. And it's an opportunity for us all to work together down the road. I'll bring that up when they get a little further along. And then Frontier Pathways, you've seen the signs, the blue signs on the highway. We've got a good group, several representatives on the board. I'm one of the board of directors for that effort. And it actually ties in with a lot of our strategic planning discussions that we've had on museums and exploiting the great things like the very first campground in the whole of the United States is the Hart campground down the south of the Hartscrabble area. So I didn't know that, and something really worthwhile to get people off of I-25 and come up here and see things and be a tourist. The working roads, one of my part-time jobs, and been driving all the roads, and a lot of people have been some good comments and how great it is. We're doing a lot of work on, if you've been out Grape Creek lately, pulling that road bed up, getting rid of the rumble strips and putting down some new gravel on that as well. It's a good time to do it because it's soft enough to make things happen. And that's what Road and Bridge are doing quite a bit in the valley. Also had some issues, subdivision. Even though the county has granted rights of ways, and when they accepted these subdivisions way back when, like Colonel Verde is a good example, that doesn't necessarily mean we maintain them. We can only take the maintenance on things we can afford to do and have enough traffic on it to do that. So those are issues that we need to keep in front of people. Yes.
Before you move off roads, a nice lady asked me about Road 328E, which is off Rosita, saying it was a county road that we don't maintain. I told her I would find out.
I'll find out exactly where that is, but
Okay.
probably we don't.
And that's fine. I just would like to get back to her because she asked. There's a series of roads off Rosita.
Yeah.
I think it's A, E, and K.
Yep.
If we just get a,
I'll take it.
what the deal is on it.
And one thing to keep in mind, it's the subdivision developer, whoever the homeowners are, to make the road come up to specs before the county can accept it. And even if it is at specs, it doesn't necessarily mean it can be accepted either.
It's fine. I just want to give her a valid answer.
Okay. Let's see what else. The meeting that we had with the water rights and that kind of things, good meetings. We've had good discussions with them. And the letter we'll talk about later is a good one to discuss. So if you can stick around about that, that'd be great. Let's see. CenturyLink, we have a meeting today with the CenturyLink team, which is the Forest Service, CenturyLink, CDOT, on how we're fixing the phones down the washed out South Hartscrabble. It also impacts a bigger picture because they're moving into taking advantage of having to do the work to bring a broadband hardwired into the valley. And so they've applied for grants. CenturyLink has, Forest Service is working with us, etc. So that'll be an interesting meeting this afternoon as well.
That's at 3 o'clock,
Yeah.
correct? At the,
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock at the library.
Library. Yeah. And then just a sort of an aside, spring, everybody cleans their house and gets the garage to where they can get in. This is not a rabbit. I ran across this famous cowboy poet, and it reminded me of when I first met the cowboy poet himself.
Oh, God.
2003, I think it was.
Spring cleaning.
Yeah, spring cleaning. It brought me, we were started to be a team way back when I first met. I actually met him a little bit before that, but interesting. We'll have to pass this around, and you'll enjoy seeing it.
And he's enjoying it.
You started it. I could pass around your
I
third
don't,
grade
no,
picture.
I don't put my third grade picture out there. He did find the third grade picture.
Oh my gosh. Anything else, sir? You're a mess.
No, I'm done.
As these gentlemen have indicated, as you gentlemen have indicated, I attended basically those same set of meetings, the water workshop, and the oral presentations, of course. I also attended a joint meeting of CART, Chamber, Tourism, and the Economic Development Corporation. They met at Westcliff Town Hall, trying to bring some collaborative efforts together again in those 4 entities, and so they had a good conversation. I really just sat in on it and listened. So that's primarily it, without going into a bunch of repetition of the stuff that you guys already talked about. So, anything else, gentlemen, under Commissioner report? I hesitate, but I guess I'm required by law to see if our counselor has anything to report.
Well, I get paid by the word, so yes. At our meeting in Wetmore last week, Kit Shire Fire Chief of Wet Mountain Fire Protection District asked if we, the county, could loan them a water truck to use for a period of time until they could acquire one for themselves, and that was important for their ISO rating, the insurance rating. It makes a big difference on homeowners insurance premiums, and the commissioners agreed to do that. So I prepared the intergovernmental agreement and sent it. I think that's been signed by Kit Shy on behalf of the Fire Protection District and by our chairman, so I think that's all taken care of. The marijuana ordinance, or proposed ordinance 19-01, which is on the agenda today for second reading. I worked on actually the hard work was done by Sheriff Byerly and Commissioner Prince. They met with some of the individuals who were unhappy with what was proposed at the first reading. There have been some revisions, and I worked on that, and we'll talk about that when that comes up on the agenda. And I attended the Justice Center meeting also, just because it was interesting, not because I have a vote on that, but I understand what the recommendation is, and it was my own choice too, so when we get to that, we'll see where we're at on it. But I guess that's pretty much what I did for the last week. Okay.
That was 2 cents a word.
Okay. I'm ready to go home then.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Administrative assistant items.
Yep.
We'll move on. Public comment. I would just tell you, if you're not aware, we will have 2 different public comment periods. One now, one at the end of the meeting. You are certainly welcome to bring up and address any issue or questions or comments that you have. You may or may not get a response from the commissioners. If it's a question, they may choose to answer it, they may not. But certainly you're welcome to voice any concerns or questions you may have at this time. Yes, sir.
Yeah, on the Upper Arkansas, the opposition to it, I hope the commissioners stay the course on the document that they signed originally in opposition of that form.
Okay, we're in public comment, so you're fine. Okay, thank you.
I gotta go.
All right.
Thank you, Cal.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, thank you. We'll move on. Staff report. Good morning.
Morning.
My golly, we have certain protocols. Clerk never stands and shakes hands.
That's
because she's busy writing.
Busy keeping up. We don't want to interrupt.
That's right. And how are you?
Good.
Good. Doing well, thank you. We've had an opportunity to look this document over. Any questions, gentlemen?
No. Same question I ask every month. Any anomalies, anything that should be brought to our attention?
We look good for
Everything
now.
pretty standard. I'll go ahead and I'll move that we accept the February monthly report from the treasurer.
I'll second
Moved and seconded to accept the February 2019 Treasurer's Report. Discussion. Okay, just wanted to track one thing. Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Virginia.
Thank you, ma'am. There will be a forthcoming voucher from somebody in the courthouse, gentlemen, because we are sick and tired of donating screwdrivers, so we're going to start charging. 2 screwdrivers grew legs in the last 30 days and walked out of the courthouse.
We're hiding it now. We're not.
Call the sheriff.
Call the sheriff. Thank you, ma'am. Have a great afternoon or a great day.
Thanks.
One woman tried to lean on me to provide another screwdriver.
I did.
You did.
Oh, yeah. All right, unfinished business, gentlemen.
I have none, sir.
Nor do I. Kenda?
Nope.
Okay, we'll move on. New business. There will be public comment allowed for each of the items under new business and old business, if it were applicable, on anything that is an action item and that the commissioners would be voting on. So I will ask prior to each vote if there's any public comment about those. First item of business is review of the vouchers. Obviously, gentlemen, we have received that packet in advance. Any Well,
I'll move that we accept the voucher
Thank you.
as
Okay.
presented.
I'll second that.
We move to second to accept the vouchers for February 1 through February 28. Discussion? Yes, sir, go ahead.
It's really not discussion, this is just whining, but I hate to
Okay,
pay
hold on, let me get ready. I'm ready.
Okay. I hate to pay $9,813.76 every quarter to a district attorney who I feel provides minimal, if any, services to this county. It's just a whine, I know we have to do it, but I just want to tell you, I feel that that's your taxpayers and my tax money out the window. I just want to make that
You
clear.
might explain that each county has a prorated piece.
That's correct.
And that's why
That's correct, and
part of
we fund the majority, well, we fund our share, but the reason I say this is we've gone to the district attorney multiple times and asked for assistance, and we've been rebuffed most of the time, so I just don't feel we get the service that we should get for the kind of money that we pay. Just a comment, my personal opinion.
I believe I could be walking out on a limb here. However, if you're going to whine, sir, I expect you to whine accurately. I believe this is not quarterly, this would be monthly.
That's a lot more money.
My mistake, you are correct. It is monthly.
And the other thing you
That's a
might
lot.
mention is we didn't take it sitting down. Every time we get together and meet with these guys, we argue about the cost.
And nothing gets resolved, unfortunately, and our hands are tied. So now, you know the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would have told you.
So we need to demand that they show up.
If you have any angst over that, I might try to ease the pain by telling you Fremont County's share of that district attorney is over $100,000 a month. We pay $9,000, so.
Wow.
Okay, anyway, sir.
Okay, I apologize,
No,
I
no
can't
problem.
hold those kind of comments in. It's just part
No
of it.
problem. Yeah, I had looked up a couple of things. I see there was $894 expended on a child fatality grant that is handled through public health, and that is for some training and for some child CPR. I hate to call them dummies. What are they?
Oh, I have some to sell.
Anyway, and a training that Carmeline attended, or is going to attend in Colorado Springs, so that was an unusual thing. And then under Road and Bridge, it was reported that, I probably won't be able to find it while I'm scrolling through it, but that we had expended $9,536 on grinder blades, and I was pretty sure the county doesn't own a grinder, and that's grater blades. They buy the year's worth of
Cutting edges.
cutting edges, grater blades. They buy those all at one time. So that was that. Yes, ma'am.
How much did we pay Steve Kastner?
I can tell you that if you give me a second. 300 and I think it was $369, but
That's
invariably when I'm under pressure my vision goes blurry, and then for me to find that
In the
figure.
$300 range.
Yes, 368 or 386.
That's fine, thank you.
We haven't paid him yet. We're getting ready to vote on whether
He
to
was,
pay him
he's a
or not.
former water commissioner that came up
Yeah,
and
you
gave
might
them
tell
advice.
them.
Yeah, Steve Kastner, we hired him to come up and meet with the commissioners to inform us about water rights, and water law.
He was good. He gave us some history.
He's a former water commissioner for District 11, or 12, sorry. I don't know, it's in here.
That's right, it's close enough, just.
Anything else, gentlemen?
Not for me, sir.
I would just.
Oh, one
quick-
thing,
Go
we're
ahead.
talking about, it's time, probably next meeting, not the next meeting, but soon, we had planned to bring each department in to see how we're tracking against the budget, and make sure we're moving the money left and right when it's needed. So we'll make sure that's on the agenda.
Good point.
Yeah, and I wonder really, this might be a Kelly question, if that we couldn't do that during those staff reports, ask them to bring that
Good time.
documentation instead of doing it during the regular meeting. They're here, so we just need to ask them to bring those figures in as we come in. And I think that would be.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And then, obviously, an unusual line item in the budget was for the Ready, Set, Go grant, $39,858, and that's grant money passed through for the fire mitigation work done in Silver Cliff Ranch. So, I toured that site, the work's going along. So, other than that, I didn't have anything else. Gentlemen,
Okay.
any further discussion? Public comment? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor of approving the vouchers for February 2019, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay. Motion carries. If you would do the honor, sir, to start that process, we'll initial these vouchers, give those to our administrative assistant, and they'll actually start printing those checks today, and they'll be stamped before the end of the day. So we will initial those as we continue. Justice Center design review, do you know, Mr. Mike, was Sheriff Byerly planning on coming over?
Yes, sir, he was.
Would you feel comfortable if we held off
Till he gets here.
till he gets here?
I'm perfectly comfortable. Thank you.
Are you? Because that's
The most comfortable.
that's all I'm concerned about, really. Is
Yeah, comfortable.
your comfort. I didn't know if you were here to speak on his behalf. That's why I was asking.
No.
Okay. With consent, gentlemen, then I would ask that we hold off on that item until Sheriff Byerly arrives. Any opposition, Commissioner Canada?
No.
Commissioner Prince?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. That brings us, by golly, to the consideration of the plaque for the BOCC mine. Welcome, gentlemen. If you all three want to come up, yeah, we can just kind of line up there by the doorway if you'd like, that's fine. We'll extend a hand of greeting and welcome. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, sir.
Hello. Sorry. How are you?
Good morning.
And would you mind telling us where you guys are from?
Originally, E-Campus Mine started back in Virginia in 1800s.
I meant you personally.
Oh, me? I live in West Cliff, work at Cimarron Manufacturing.
Okay.
Been there 5 years, came from California, best move ever. So that's where I'm from.
His name?
Eric King.
Yeah, they introduced themselves
Yeah.
once, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Stan Robinson. I moved up here from Denver about 5 years ago, do construction.
Nice, good,
Michael Meschke, owner of Elite Home Service.
great, all right, welcome, yeah. So with that, obviously, you're here representing E-Clampus Vitus as a historical preservation, mostly for mining in western
history.
History in the western half of the U.S.?
Western half of the U.S. We're, our chapter, Alpaca, is the last chapter from the west, going east. And Alpaca's been a chapter since 1990, and there's over 42 chapters in the West Coast.
Wow.
And pretty much, there's a book right there I forgot to bring over, but it's full of all the plaques from 2008 to 2012.
Wow.
So if you guys want, we did throw some plaques in there,
Yeah.
mainly Colorado, but this is throughout the West.
Wow.
So yeah.
Yeah. And upon some research, I find the purported to be the oldest fraternal organization, certainly in the U.S.
In the U.S., yes, it is. We do a lot of work for, we call them widows and orphans, and that's basically how it started. Was a miner would die, they would pass a hat to pay the mortgage, food, and stuff like that for miners, and we still do that too. We're actually going to be taking over Wild Bill's Toy Drive.
Oh, nice.
So
good.
it'd be a yeah. Yeah, so we're getting that process going and stuff like that, because we do the Bob Telemasi one down in Colorado Springs every year, and a bunch of us go out there and volunteer our time, you know. So, but with the plaquings, it doesn't cost anything for you guys. We do all the plaquing. Like last year, we plaqued the Silver Cliff mine in Silver Cliff, right there at that triangle. Low on funds, so we went out there and cut wood, hustled to get a plaque, because a plaque costs about $1,200 to make.
Wow.
So, but we had the funds this year because of our last camp out. We made enough money for our plaque. So we're just getting permission. We talked to the owner of the BOCC mine, and he's actually working on saving. Mr. BOCC built a high school in Minnesota.
Yes.
In Minnesota. Well, they want to tear it down. So he's been working on trying to save the high school. So this is kind of working out for him too, because he's trying to preserve history, and he's the owner of the BOCC mine. And he, our friend Gil Vasquez, has been in contact with them, which he was supposed to be here, and got the approval to place the plaque. But we just wanted the approval from the commissioners too to place the plaque. You know.
Can I ask two questions, please? First is, why this BOCC mine is a private mine,
Yes.
and your organization is going to work with the owner.
Mm-hmm.
Why is this even coming before the commission? Is this just a courtesy?
It's
a
more of a
courtesy.
courtesy and
It's
a
wonderful,
formality.
and I sincerely appreciate that.
It's
That
a
is
courtesy and all that stuff, and you know, and to let you guys be aware of that, we're here and we want to do more work. Like the interesting thing about the first campground in Colorado, or that is making my wheels
First
turn.
campground in the United States.
See, and my wheels are turning to, hey, let's go plaque, you know, work on plaquing that, so to keep the history alive.
Where are you going to put the plaque?
On the
So that the public can see it
Oh, basically right on the road.
on the road.
Yeah, and it's gonna be in the National Registry of Historical Plaques. So, and, like, where my shop is, the plaque I see that I put up last year, I see so many people looking at that. You know, there's actually people that will tour for plaques. So,
And the location, that's not gonna be on a CDOT right away?
no, it's not gonna be on
private land?
private, but right on basically.
It's on the county road and they actually pass it.
I
Yeah,
understand that.
So-
I know the one you're talking about.
basically we're gonna try to put it right on that line where it's not infringing anybody and it's still, you can read it, you know.
I commend you for this.
Where a motor grader doesn't hit it.
Yes, exactly, yeah, you know.
I commend you for keeping our history going and putting up a plaque so visitors can see what's going on. And for those of us who live here would like more information, so I think it's a very worthwhile project, and I really appreciate you doing it.
Yeah, a couple comments. One, your noted interest about the original Forest Service campground started by a man with the last name of Carhart. And that gentleman sitting right over there that's gonna look at you and smile, that is the guy you need to talk to about that, because that's one of his passions as well. Wouldn't that be cool to have a plaque up on near the highway there at that entrance?
Yeah, and we do have a lot of displays down in the actual Davenport campground, but nothing really on the highway.
Yeah, after a conversation with Mr. Ruthie, I drove down in there, it's pretty cool. Very cool. So, yeah,
Making my
get a
wheels
chance.
turn.
Yeah, so visit with Jeff at some point.
I would definitely do that.
Yeah, there's a couple questions. So I have, and I'll get an answer to your question. I'm assuming the plaque will look something similar to
Yep,
that.
it'd be bronze.
But with that particular wording on it, or something similar?
Something similar to
Okay.
that. Well, we would like some feedback from you guys. And I will leave my email address and stuff like that.
Yeah, so this is the one that you had referenced
Yep.
earlier,
Yes.
June of 2018.
Yep.
Yeah, Chair would entertain a motion.
I'll move that we accept the, how we want to
Proposal.
phrase it. It's a proposal to
Or
sponsor the plaque.
Yeah.
I'll second it.
Moving to second to authorize a proposal for plaquing the BOCC mine by the Alpaca chapter of the E-Campus Vitus organization. Discussion. A question, when do you think this would occur?
This will be happening our camp out, we're gonna be at Lake Louise. We do it, try to spread it out to Colorado, but June 21st, 22nd, 23rd. June 21st is the day of the plaquing. We're gonna do it probably about noon. It's gonna be announced throughout town so people can show up. And like last year, a few of the public people showed up because they weren't sure what was going on, they didn't understand, but now it's, you know, we're starting to get our name out. And
It's a good tourist thing.
it is, and so we'll make sure everything's out. We work with Peggy. You know, actually, her restaurant is an ECV watering hole, we call them. That's our basically where we go and go hang out. You know, if we want to get together and.
And I have
you
a
know,
plaque to show.
Yeah.
Water hole, number one.
If you would please coordinate with Meredith, and she'll give you the email address.
Sounds good.
So that any or all of us could attend, and
Yeah,
again,
definitely.
I just want to
Oh yeah, you're gonna be.
congratulate you and thank you for this.
Thank you. Thank you very much, guys.
All right, any further discussion, public comment?
Not done.
Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor of supporting the BOCC mine placking June 21, 2019, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. There you go, gentlemen. Thank you. Good to have you guys here.
Thank you for
Appreciate
taking
it.
over Wild Bill's. I need to talk,
That
Yes.
is really
because I have
Yeah.
some great ideas.
Oh, good, because we need.
Molly, there's a chair up
Yeah,
here.
it's a little cold than I thought. A little
Thank
stuffy.
you, sir. Yes, I appreciate it. All right, very good.
Sheriff's not
I
here.
don't see him yet. Again, gentlemen, by consent, I'd like to move down this tourism bylaws thing real quick, if you don't mind, and, no problem. Or we could press on, I guess, now. I was just gonna move on to the Forest Service. Maybe we better stick to the agenda. So with that, we will move on to tourism bylaws. Miss Peggy, I understand you're here to represent tourism.
I am.
You come forward, ma'am. I'll shake your hand as well as the rest of these commissioners. Welcome. How are you?
Peggy?
Good to see you. Have a seat.
So, I know there was confusion with my red line version,
We're good now.
but we are good now.
We're good.
So the version that you have is as we would like to
Okay.
have approved.
Thanks for fixing that for us. Can I ask a question while you're
You
looking
may,
at it?
sir.
Everybody in the county is either a commission or a board, and you are considering being called a bureau.
Correct.
Please tell us why.
Well, at the tourism board meeting, when Deb Adams, who's our chair, suggested the change from board to bureau, she read, and had I known that you were going to ask, I would have brought. But the point is that bureau seems to us to sound more user-friendly than a board. We feel that we would be more approachable as a bureau.
It's just a change from our normal terminology for our committees and our groups, our boards, and, you know, that kind of thing. So I was just a little surprised. I don't think it's a big deal.
Are we considering that today, or is
Well, it's
it?
part of the bylaws.
Yeah. No, we're
It's the
considering
very
bylaws.
first thing, the name of the organization is Custer County Tourism Bureau.
Oh,
I think there may be a statutory problem. You know, our tourism board is created under Colorado revised statutes, and we have the lodging tax that way. It uses the term board there. I don't think we can just change it to a bureau.
Yeah, I agree. I looked that up. Colorado revised statutes, of course, it doesn't specifically say it's prohibition of some, but I can't support the word bureau either. I think it should remain board, but Chair would entertain a motion.
could look
for
into it, I guess,
approval.
later.
I'll go ahead and I'll make the motion for approval because I really would like to discuss issues.
Yes, thank you, sir.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the bylaws for the Custer County Tourism Board. Discussion. Obviously, we talked about the bureau thing. If you want to continue that, we can. If
I would
not,
like to
we'll
make
move
one
on.
comment
Okay.
on that, because I don't have a problem looking into it if you really feel strong, and if you can research what the rest of the state who has the same statutes governing tourism boards, that's some other thing that sets a precedence we ought to probably know.
Yeah, I've looked, I can't find anything, but I certainly haven't looked at every set of bylaws for tourism boards in the
I
state.
remember at one of the board meetings, I asked Deb why Bureau, because this came up earlier. And that's why I asked you, because I really can't remember. She had what seemed like a reasonable response at the time. There was something that was different about tourism than the others. So, you know, I hate, if it's statutory, I don't think we have any choice whatsoever.
I don't believe it's statutory.
Okay. I don't know, I don't have major problems with it, but it just seems, we're not consistent anyway with some boards, some committees, some bureau. I don't know.
Come back. Tell us.
Yeah, I just think it should be left as a tourism board. That's what's in the statutes, that's what's in all of the documentation. I don't like changes, so we can say we changed. If board was not a legal term or was not being used consistently throughout the county, then I would have a little different feeling about that. But I want to move on, unless somebody else has something to say about that. Article 2, under purposes, Colorado Revised Statutes. I looked it up. Title 30, Article 11, Section 107.5 should be a decimal point there.
Correct.
For the establishment of.
Yes, and I had it that way, and someone changed it.
Okay. Let's see, gentlemen, certainly jump in anytime you want.
Overall, you did a good job pulling it together.
Well, I agree with that. I mean, overall, this is a great document.
A lot better than it was.
A couple of just general questions. I'm looking at Article 2A. I read this carefully. 2A. I'm sorry, 3A. 3A, I apologize. I didn't
Hold on,
know
let's get caught up. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Is it the intent that you must be a full-time resident of Custer County? And then the question came to me, and that's fine if that's what you want. What constitutes a full-time resident? And what I mean by that is, if someone owns a home here, but only visits periodically, how do you determine who is a full-time resident, who is not?
Well, I think we go back to domicile in general. And we do have in here that registered to vote alone doesn't qualify.
Tell me what doesn't qualify, but don't, if you put the word domicile as opposed to full-time resident,
Okay.
I personally would fully understand what you're talking
All
about.
right. But we can certainly do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I had drafted a definition of residency back either last fall or early this spring. Didn't get any traction on it, but this is exactly why I tried to come up with a definition of residency. It depends on how much teeth you really want in that that statement about being a full-time resident. I'll just read you the 4 things that I thought if we were really going to do. It's not just tourism. We got this throughout the county. A person must have a valid Colorado driver's license with a Custer County address. A person must be registered voter in Custer County. A person must have, if owned vehicles, registered in Custer County. And a person must regularly receive mail at a Custer County address.
That's the definition of domicile.
I disagree, but I won't argue semantics. The point is, a full-time resident, can they live in Phoenix 3 months out of the year and be a full-time resident? I say no. If I'm sure you've had this discussion amongst your members of the tourism board, but
Our thinking is that we want people who are dedicated to this county. And
agree 100%. Yeah, these 4 definitions, in my opinion, do not answer the question of are they a full-time resident or a part-time resident, whether they own a home here or not. They could be a part-time resident and live here 11 months out of the year.
And certainly, your domicile could be Custer County,
Sure.
and you live 11 months elsewhere.
Right. It doesn't make you a full-time resident.
Full-time resident.
We've had this discussion with several boards, and that's I don't know, but if you say full-time resident and somebody spends a couple months in the winter in Arizona, is that gonna be an issue? I concur 100%, I think, with the philosophy of there's no reason to have people on your board if they're not gonna be here. That's what it boils down to. So, at some point, I could see the tourism board coming to the commission and say, we want you to approve dropping a member because they just don't come to our meetings. And that would fall under this whole Article 3, in my opinion. But, so you're comfortable with the language the way it is currently, without further explanation? Just a question, I'm not challenging you, I'm just...
Can I help with that answer? Okay. Here's how I would like to suggest, certainly, and the suggestion is the same thing I'm trying to do right now, is say, we're giving them the responsibility, let's give them the authority. If they feel it's not appropriate, let them come back to us and say, we have this member that we do not feel is in line with the spirit of what we want. So rather than nitpick it, Mr. Chairman, I think we ought to just give them the authority to say domiciled in Custer County and let them come to us and feel if there's an issue, they bring it to us. That's just my suggestion.
Okay, all right, good. We'll move on. Anything else, gentlemen? There's a lot of changes, no question.
I like
totally
it.
a different document
You did a good job.
Thank you.
than what was written in the
It's not
beginning.
my first rodeo.
I know.
Can I jump in here?
Yes, sir.
Because I was looking
Sure,
at the statutory language. I think Peggy's right. The statute does not specifically say that you have to have a tourism board. It says the commissioners shall appoint a panel that will handle the lodging tax fund. And this panel, and then it makes reference to a marketing entity, but they don't use the term board here. So I think our only problem may be the resolution back when the lodging tax passed. I think it made reference to board then, and we may have to amend that if you decide you want to call it a bureau instead of a
I've heard
board.
of tourism bureaus before. I don't know how it relates to this particular statute.
Yeah. Certainly the resolution 12-01 spoke to Custer County Tourism Board.
Okay. Right.
Signed on the 7th day of February 2012.
Which I guess the commissioners at that time named it a board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anything else here, gentlemen, that jumps out? The membership was 5 members, is that correct?
Maximum of 9, minimum of 5.
Minimum of 5, yeah.
And we know the statute doesn't limit the membership if you all are.
Yes. It's too unwieldy.
Yeah.
That's up to you.
Statute sets the minimum, it doesn't address the
That's right.
maximum. Well, if the tourism board was willing to leave the name board, I believe I could support this document. If not, then I will vote against approving the bylaws. So that's where I stand. Gentlemen, any further discussion? What do you think, Miss Peggy? Are you bought into Bureau?
I was, but I'm certainly not going to make it an issue that we can't get this thing signed.
Either prove now, if you want to change
After
it, come back
3
with a
months.
good argument and we can consider the name change.
That's fine.
You may. You won't get a vote from me to do that.
Oh,
But that doesn't mean that he's speaking for him.
I don't need your vote.
No.
I just need these
So if you make a good enough case and he still doesn't believe it, you can try as often as you want.
Well done.
As Commissioner Prince has said, that's why there's 3 of us and not
right.
1. Yeah.
I call the question, let's move on.
Previous question's been called. All in favor of the previous question, which ends all debate and calls for immediate vote, say aye.
Aye.
Wait. I'm sorry. You're calling the question, not to vote on the
He
issue.
called the question, we're voting on previous question.
Right.
Correct.
Nay.
Nay. Motion fails, previous question fails. Further discussion?
Yeah. I'm not hung up on Bureau Board. I mean, to me, it's another one of those. They're such a separate entity. They're the only entity that I'm aware of that collects tax dollars. you read the term, Counselor, just a minute ago, what was it?
It says
Panel.
select a panel
Yeah.
to administer the tourism fund.
Thank you, and we don't have panel in here. I'm not hung up on bureau, so I just want to make a comment now.
I'm not gonna call it again.
The only other question I had on the whole document was the distributing up to 10% of the lodging tax revenue. Have you guys talked about that? Or is that a historical thing?
It's in historical.
Okay.
Maybe statutory, I'm not sure.
No, it's not.
No.
It's not.
It's not statutory. Well, since I've been involved with this, the question has always come when they do give money to other committees or boards within the county, it has always been to promote tourism. Tourism, my eyes, is to bring people from outside of Custer County into Custer County, not supporting an in-house program where we're not bringing people out. And I think the tourism board has done an excellent job with that. So I feel they've administered this very well.
Thank you.
Then the only other question I had, and this really just came up yesterday, let me see if I can find it under Article 6. Article 6, Section A states that monthly meetings of the Tourism Board shall be held. You've got that statement in there twice. Shall be held, shall be held. At such times and places fixed by the members at its first meeting each year. And then somewhere it said that the Tourism Board was going to meet in the Commissioner's room, unless you have deleted that.
I don't see it. I see
Yeah,
that the
so-
notice will state the date, time, location, and agenda for the meeting.
Yeah, it was, I think, in the past scheduled to meet in the Commissioner's room. Now, it may have been dropped out of this proposed. And the reason I bring that up is after sitting in the meeting yesterday, there was some discussion about, I think it's probably, well, I know it can be made public because that was a public meeting I sat in yesterday, about maybe the Tourism Board, CART, Economic Development, and the Chamber all sharing a meeting sharing a meeting room in the basement of the Westcliff Town Hall. So if it's been deleted out of here, no issue. I was thinking it was still in there that you were going to meet in the Commissioner's room. But if we go with the language that says it will be stated at the first meeting of the year of where you're going to meet, then I think it's a moot point.
I didn't think it was appropriate to be in the bylaws.
Okay. Yeah, because you may decide you want to meet somewhere else for whatever reason, but according to your bylaws, you have to meet here. So that was my concern, and I agree with your assessment there. Good. I think those are all the changes or concerns, questions that I had. I just wonder, Article 5, Section D, second to the last sentence in that entire paragraph, there should be a $sign in front of the 100. Because in this county it could be 100 pigs, 100 cows. Oh, you do have, okay. I do not in my red line version. Okay. So again, we're looking at two different documents, aren't we? Gosh dang it. Further discussion?
What's the motion?
The motion is to approve the bylaws for the Tourism Board. As presented. Pardon? No, we voted on previous question that Commissioner Kanda called to end the debate, and that failed, so we're still in a period of debate. Okay.
Don't you need to say as amended? If we're going to change the domicile.
The amendments that we're making to the draft that I'm looking at.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I just don't wanna approve it as amended.
Right.
As amended with these changes and list them if we may.
Okay, so let's go back through those. One, and depends on whose document we're talking about now, right? Because as a commissioner, I'm going to vote on the document that's in front of me, not the documents in front of you. So that's where I'm coming from. Commissioner Canada, did you have changes?
No.
I recommend leaving the word board instead of bureau. So that would be
I agree.
an amendment. That would be Article 1. Article 2, 107.5 instead of 1,075. Full-time resident, we're agreed that you can leave that.
No, it was
We're gonna change it to
domiciled.
Domicile is the.
Could you give us the wording?
Domiciled in Custer County.
An individual, so we're gonna scratch is a full-time resident of.
Correct.
And insert.
Who is domiciled in Custer County?
Okay.
And the redundancy you found.
And then
Shall be twice.
the determination,
6A.
sorry, sir. I'm still on 3A.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. So we're gonna have to change the wording on 3A, the second full-time resident, correct?
Right.
The determination as to whether or not an individual is a full-time resident of Custer County shall be made by the BOCC.
Correct.
So you wanna change that to be, as to whether or not an individual is domiciled in.
Correct.
Okay. Anything else?
6A.
Six.
Five, the dollar sign. Five
Okay,
D.
yeah, yeah.
Right, good.
6A you said?
Yes, sir. That's where we have shall be twice.
Oh, yeah. 6A. Delete shall be held.
I'm fine with the rest of it.
That gets everything we discussed.
Okay, we really appreciated 8D about how they're going to run their meetings according to Robert's rules. That's
What does he say about shouting during meetings?
necessary.
That was rhetorical.
Shout away. Further discussion, gentlemen?
No, sir.
Public comment? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote as the document has been amended. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay. Motion carries. Thank you, ma'am. You bet. Thank you for coming in.
You're out of here.
No, I'm not. I've got another one.
Oh. Now this year.
Mr. Barley, we did roll down one item on our agenda, for a couple of items actually, so, if you would like to come forward, sir, you would be next on the Justice Center Design Contract Award.
Custer County.
Great uniform.
Blue Jean Friday?
Well,
I forgot. Well, if you don't know, so,
Yeah.
so you pay $1 if you want to wear blue jeans on Friday. We save that money and then we donate it to like Wild Bill's Toy Run or different things.
I should have told him.
What a great idea, that is a great idea.
Great.
I did wear blue jeans, so I will pay up. Don't really
Sure,
like
you wanna
your
give it
rules,
direct to him? Maybe
pass
there's
it
a
on to
treasure.
the commissioner.
Doesn't necessarily apply to you.
Oh, it doesn't? Oh, I thought it
It's
did.
something we do at our office.
Well, welcome. Morning.
Morning, how are you, gentlemen?
Doing well, thank you.
Good.
So, Justice Center Committee met.
We did. So on the 26th, as you know, the three of you were there, but so on the 26th we held the panel that was chosen out of the Citizens Committee to conduct oral interviews for the architectural firms that, the top 5 firms that we chose from the submittal of their packets on the RFP. We conduct those oral interviews. You have the letter and the scoring sheet that I sent to you, or sent to Meredith on Wednesday. So we, as you can see in that letter, and I don't know if you provided any for the group, or if you want me to summarize what the letter says.
Whatever you're comfortable with.
I'll probably just let you discuss it. But anyways, as you can see in that letter, so we did conduct those interviews. Of the 5 firms, I think the panel essentially agreed that any four of the top 4 firms could handle the project quite adeptly, but ultimately that's not what we were there for. We were there to choose one. After the interviews were over, but before we compiled the scoring, we did a straw poll.
Before you say that, just so everybody understands, we were there to learn. We did not participate in the vote.
Right.
Matter of fact, I wasn't there. We were gone.
Correct. And
So this is news.
Yeah.
It's your job to recommend.
Okay. As I did in the letter and the scoring. So, of the 5 firms, I don't know if you want me to list the 5 firms. Anders, no, okay.
Public knowledge, but
so we did a straw poll after the interviews were done, but before we compiled all the scores. Everyone, 7 of the 8 members selected Riley Johnson in the straw poll, and then in the
he concurs, but he brought that in yesterday. I know.
And then when we did the scoring revealed, and it was actually surprised me a little bit, but Riley Johnson did in fact get the highest score. I think it was 89. Riley Johnson was 89. SEH 86.
Correct.
DLR Group 83. And then Anderson Halls was an 80. So it was kind of ironic that there were steps of 3, but those were and then the last one, RMKM, was down in the 65 or something like that.
63 and a half.
63 and a half. So with that in mind, the panel agrees, and I know there's a couple people here from the panel. We would recommend that you select Riley Johnson, who just for everyone in the room, they have probably the most relative experience with the project, the size that we're talking about. Certainly the other firms have plenty of experience as well, but Riley Johnson does in fact have a lot. They're in 32 counties. They've done projects in 32 counties in Colorado, Wyoming, New Mexico, Montana. So.
Okay. Chair would entertain a motion.
I move we accept the recommendations presented.
I second it.
Been moved and seconded to accept the recommendation of the Justice Center Committee to hire Riley Johnson as our architect engineer firm for the Justice Center project. Discussion. Go ahead, sir. That's all I wanted to do was get us on.
You just took care of it. I was just concerned that maybe there was some people who didn't understand what we're doing.
Yeah.
From a macro view, we purchased the land, and we're now hiring the architect to come up with conceptual designs for us to review and comment. My other comment would be to you and your committee, kudos for excellent job done.
And I do want to just state, so the only reason I'm the one presenting this is because I'm
the chair.
They want me to be the chair, not because this is my project or my installation.
Would you, mostly for the audience's sake, talk to us now about what this firm is going to do?
Sure. So.
And then where we go from there.
So the RFP, which we put out in January, and that's what this firm was interviewing for to be selected for that RFP. essentially, without going into the weeds of it, so they're going to conduct programming analysis, which basically means they're going to say, okay, you have this facility now. What are you going to need for 2020, and then what will you need for 2030? And so they'll try to project out what our needs will be for the next. They try to do it for at least 15 years out, with hopes that it'll for 25. But so they will do that projections, and that'll come from a lot of different interviews, data, meetings, and we'll sit down with them and we'll get that data and that information together for them. Then they will take that back, and then they will essentially put together a conceptual design of what the building will look like, both from a floor plan standpoint and also from a 3D design on the outside of it. And so they will provide all of that information to us, which then we can look at, and then we can present to the citizens within the county, and then we'll have to also assess the cost of what that building is going to be. They'll help us with that as well. What the cost of that will be, what our best avenue is to raise money for that project, and there will be some different options there, and then we'll take it from there.
One thing I
want
to focus something that you said. It's not just presented to the citizens. They're going to do some work to understand what the citizens' concepts are ahead of that time.
Right. So we'll have some citizens
involving the community.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's going to be meetings, and I don't know the best verbiage to put it, a seminar or a presentation, community involvement as well, to get some ideas and thoughts and go from there.
Go ahead. I'm good. Okay. Couple things then. I don't believe you mentioned this. If you did, I apologize. But the bid from Riley Johnson was for $65,800.
Correct.
Could you talk to us about how that is going to be paid for?
Yeah. So that is all from a DOLA, from an underfunded court grant that we obtained. So it's we have $75,000 total. I believe so 40,000 comes from DOLA, 40 from DOLA, I thought it was 35 from underfunded. So essentially the county it isn't costing the county any direct dollars for this RFP and these conceptual designs. And so that's one of the main reasons we're doing it, is because it hasn't cost us any money to this point other than time.
And do you have the figure of the highest bid? Do you remember what that was?
Anderson Halls was 74.5. I believe it's 74.5. Might have been 9, but I think it's 74.5.
The highest one we got was rejected was
over
90,000.
Well, that's true, but we didn't consider them.
Right. And then the completion date, time frame?
August. So we don't have a specific date in August yet. That will be vetted out when we start the time process and how quickly we can move through some of that programming. But August will be the deadline for them to complete it.
Good. With a friendly amendment, let's see, did you make the motion, sir? Could we add at the price of $65,800 in that motion?
That ought to be in.
You okay with that, sir? The second of the motion by consent? I just think we ought to have that in the motion. Further discussion, gentlemen? Public comment? Let's start right here. Hold on just a second.
Just want to make sure that the company's name is Riley Johnson. There's not a bunch of stuff after that.
Yeah, there is.
Riley Johnson Associates.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where are they out of?
Denver.
Denver.
Reilly.
Oh, Reilly.
They had
Okay.
the offices.
And sir, you had a question or a comment? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
That bid also does not include reimbursable expenses, so it is the bid plus that. Approximately $4,000.
Which still falls under the $75,000
Right,
grant.
you don't want to make it hard and fast in the motion.
Yeah, and those, I don't know if we need to explain what some of those would be. That's for when they come down to do, say, like the community presentation, where they come down to meet with us. There'll be a few overnight stays, so they're just basically, that's to cover the cost of their hotel, food.
It was not written in the bid because they had no idea what our request was gonna be.
Right, how many times we're gonna expect them to stay overnight for multiple meetings.
And for the record, I'm putting you on the spot here, maybe between all of us, we come up, could you tell us who the members of that committee were? They certainly need, some recognition, because they spent a ton of man hours on that.
And Mike, you can help me out if you need to. So Ann Barthorpe was on that. Judge Hunter, who's the county judge. So Lisa Rowe, who is the court administrator, or I think now the state changed that to court executive, but court administrator. Let's see, I'm trying to go down the list here. So Mike Halpin in the back was court security was on there. Steve Bauer, a community member. Mike Smith, a community member. George Veltman, community member, and myself. Those were the 8.
Perfect. Thank you. Further discussion? Public comment? Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Are you gonna have to amend that motion to
We
the
did
reimbursable?
to the reimbursables, gentlemen.
Yeah.
An opinion about that?
It's part of the contract.
Part of the
We're
contract.
approving the contract.
Under
It's
the,
okay.
momentum. That's all right.
Thank you. Okay, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor of hiring Riley Johnson from Associates out of Denver for the bid price of $65,800 for the architect for the Justice Center, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. A lot of work involved in that, wasn't there? And you heard him say that he agreed with the Bruce there, right? So you did have unanimous. Thank you, sir. Oh, here. I want to re-gift this to you. These were given to Commissioner Prince to give to the commissioners, but you were the one that brought that to the commission, and that was dealing with how we voted on becoming a sanctuary city, so.
I wish I remembered the gentleman's name, but I will get it for you. He asked me to give it to the key players in the Second Amendment, Sanctuary City, Sanctuary County.
Was he from Fremont County?
No, he lives here.
Oh, okay.
And he gave me 2, so I assumed he meant my commissioners who voted, but I think it's certainly appropriate for you to have
Thanks.
them.
You bet.
Thanks, well, you know, I keep
I will pass
collecting
That's
it.
why I
Thanks.
gave it to you, because I know.
Are you leaving or staying? Okay.
No, I have.
Okay, very good. Next item on the agenda, our friends from the Forest Service. If you can make your way forward.
Try to revoke this.
Yeah, no problem.
Hello?
See you again, Destiny.
Good morning, how are you?
Good, thank you. Hello?
You
Nice
too.
to be here.
Destiny Chapman.
Hey, Jeff. So yeah, we just wanted to give you a few updates on the forest, what's happening on your national
Could
forest.
you do a formal introduction?
And to talk about a resolution on South Forest gravel. And then introduce our district ranger. This is our new district ranger for the San Carlos Ranger District, which covers just shy of 500,000 acres from kind of the Arkansas River down to New Mexico. So this is Destiny Chapman. Thanks.
Hello?
Nice to have you here.
Well, pleased to be here. I was fortunate enough to be selected for this position. Paul Crispin, the former ranger, had been here for a while. He retired in August, so luckily I'm here now, so I'm very honored to be here and be your district ranger for this area, so I appreciate that. I just thought we'd give some updates on some stuff. If you have questions, you can let us know. It was interesting, we've been mentioning Arthur Carhart today, and Jeff here had a brilliant idea that we should host an Arthur Carhart Day because it's in honor of his 100th birthday, is that correct?
The 100th anniversary of him arriving on the San Isabel National Forest in 1919.
I think, just so you know, that Historic Pathways is also going to be part of that.
Okay,
You
yeah.
probably need to talk to Bob Bolton.
I will.
To figure out how to put them together.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, you know, he really had a strong presence here in Custer County. It was mentioned earlier, the Davenport Campground. It was also instrumental in the development of the Lake Isabel area as well, so he was a pioneer in developed recreation, so it's pretty neat that he's got ties to this area. So we're looking at June 8th for that.
Yeah.
So park here off Main Street, is that right?
Yeah, the Just Price Memorial.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And is that Carhartt as in Carhartt?
I don't know, the family, the
No.
spelling's the same.
It's spelled.
June 8th, huh?
Yes, June 8th. It's also a great opportunity for the community to come out and interact with Ranger District employees, so look forward to having people there. Just want to give an update on some of the fuels mitigation work that we've been doing. So some of you have probably seen on Facebook, we've been doing a lot of pile burning along the 12-mile road. You tend to see the smoke and see the Facebook postings, that's why I bring that up here, even though that is Pueblo County. But just to let you know, we've burned 13,000 piles since the end of January along that stretch. So that was a lot of hand cut and pile work that had been done. So the crews have done a phenomenal job out there getting that done. A lot of next steps to that project as well. So we'll be looking to, remove additional trees through contracts and timber sales, and also do some broadcast burn in that area so that we can retain that investment we made. If we don't keep doing work in there, it's just going to grow back up. So we're excited about that. We are also in our planning phase for a vegetation management project along the East Central Wets, which would include part of Custer County as well as Pueblo. Our proposal is to treat about 16,700 acres over a 10-year period. Our treatments would include thinning, creating openings, fuel breaks, and doing some prescribed burning. So our projection period for that project will be about mid-April. So you'll see information on that coming out about that time. We will be doing some prescribed burning this fall, again at Black Mountain, which you all tend to see some smoke from that. Probably about 1,500 acres in the Black Mountain area. Some more work along the 12-mile road, probably about 200 acres. And then some more work up in Alvarado and Tanglewood, about 100 acres out there. How much of that work we get done just depends on burn window availability. Do you have stuff that you wanted to add on fuels?
So just that, most of you of course saw the piles. We had a little over 2,000 piles up behind Alvarado and Tanglewood. We did get all those burned. That whole process started, there's a series of things. We did a timber sale in there first, what we could get to. Then we supply firewood to the public at that point, and then whatever's left over that we can't sell or get rid of, we hand pile and burn, and that's what you saw on those. About 2,400 piles, I believe, up there. Those are all done. So if you get a chance to go up there, you can kind of see what some of that looks like after we're done with that.
As far as timber, the Blue Lake sale up on top of the Greenhorn will be completed by the end of September. The Morel salvage sale, we sold that in December. That's also up on the Greenhorn. Work on that likely will start this summer, depending on ground conditions. It's pretty muddy right now, but we'll see how it goes. Layout of future sale areas on the Greenhorn will probably start happening in the summer of 2020, with timber sales going out for advertisement probably April through June of 2021. So we're continuing to do our work up there. The Scout Ranch timber sale is 75% completed. That termination date currently is June 27th of this year with a possible 1-year extension. That's what we got for timber. Do you want to talk personal fuel wood?
So yeah, just kind of our whole, what we call forest products. So we actually sell a lot of firewood in Custer County. So and those monies actually stay here, and we're able to use it mainly for treating weeds and building roads. So, but those products include firewood and Christmas trees mostly. This year we're going to start doing some transplants as well, so if you know somebody that wants to buy some transplants, I can sell from 3 to 10 transplants for personal use at home. So those kind of things. And then we've also started a commercial forest products where we've had a few folks come in wanting larger quantities of transplants and firewood, so we're doing some of those things too. And that's helping us a lot. Not only with our fuels mitigation, I kind of try to tier it off of that where it can help us with, creating better fuel breaks along roads and trails and trailheads and that kind of thing.
I do want to give a big thank you to Cindy Howard. She's done tremendous work on mitigation around homes, and that investment that she's made really, I think, will pay off, and she's worked very hard on that. So also like to commend everybody's work with the county to address our wildfire issues, the Sunbury Foothills Community Wildfire Protection Plan, and so thank you for your efforts regarding wildfire management and preparedness. It really helps out a lot, so appreciate that. What else do you wanna talk about? Got some other stuff.
All that. Just, we do have the water in Lake Isabel, so I'm not real familiar with it, but you might be more so, but we've at least tried to cover that. Back in the 30s, when that was built with WPA and CCC, they had permission to fill it, but did not get a storage right, so we've been working through that, and I think we've come to some resolutions at least with
So
that.
we've got a 30-year agreement with Public Board of Waterworks to lease water on an annual basis to, as part of our augmentation plan. So we also have a long-term augmentation plan being filed with the state water court as well. So while that is going through the process, we've got this other short-term resolution on that.
So that gives a big kind of a highlight. So, you know, my office is up in Silver Cliff there on Hermit Lane. If anybody's ever got questions, I'm not in there a lot, but please feel free to stop by and give me a call. And then the
Before you
main
move on,
no, go ahead.
tell us how many people's on your trail maintenance crew for this.
So we split our crews up for this district, so we've got about 200 miles of motorized, and we have about a 4-person trail crew that we actually get grants through the OHV sticker, the stickers you buy. We have one of the better programs in the state for motorized trails, about 200 miles. Then we have about a little over 200 miles of non-motorized trail crew, and Tom just set me up. And that's just me.
Now wait a minute, surely you're bossing somebody.
Yeah, no. We do have 3 volunteer groups that are just starting to become active. We have a volunteer group out of Penrose, the Backcountry Horsemen, that do some. We have a new trail group here out of Westcliff called Trails for All that is starting to become very active. And then we have one that covers the Spanish Peaks, the La Vida Trails. So those are starting to ramp up. We don't have huge volunteer bases in our little rural counties, but the ones that are usually really active and really dedicated. It may be only 3 people, and so we get a lot out of that.
Thanks, sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
No,
you.
you're all right. So, but yeah, this year, you know, with the snow, it's gonna be a lot longer. You know, in the past, there's been years where we've started clearing trail this time of year. So I'm figuring we won't get to a lake till probably 1st of July this year. So that's kind of the thing.
I'll put it in perspective. 200 miles is like going from here to Fort Collins with 4 guys chucking away.
Yeah.
County roads are 380. That's like maintaining a road with a couple motor graders to Albuquerque.
And then I'm usually carrying a crosscut saw on it.
That's right, you don't get a chainsaw and And your last item, sir?
So we want to ask the commissioners to modify resolution 17-09. And that was the resolution that we enacted after the Junkins fire. We had what we call a special order, and you guys enacted that resolution to close County Road and Forest Road 386 South Hardscrabble. So that's had a little bit of time. We want you to we would ask that you modify it to open the west end, the top end of that road, to all previous uses, and leave the bottom closure in effect.
We originally talked about the bottom. What was the reason to leave it in?
We did get through with some number of engineers on the bottom end, and there's big boulders. It's still, we have that road under what's called the Schedule A agreement with the county, so we supply funds through the federal, I think it's through the federal gas tax. So those funds are provided to the county through the federal government to maintain that road. Well, they'd be in there every week maintaining that right now, so we would like to see things stabilize a little better. We are going to keep looking at the lower end frequently, and we'll come back and let you know what we think too. But right now we ask that you just open the west end and not the east end. And our special order is expired, so that would basically open up that area to the public, back into their public lands with not really any restrictions. I am going to post a whole bunch of warning signs right there at that upper end trailhead, because there's still a lot of movement in that country with soil, rocks, trees. When there's any kind of water event, rain event, things are moving.
Yeah, and that's probably worth noting. The washout occurred with a 1/4 inch of rain. Because of the forest fire, it made it unstable, and it's that way still. And so we could open that road up, you could build it, but you'd be fixing another $1 million, $2
We'd be
million
rebuilding it all
road
the time.
project again. It really washed it out.
Yeah, and so that bottom end, that bottom mile isn't quite as impacted, but it's still, we were thinking, well, maybe we can open that too, but getting in there and looking at it and the amount of material that had moved on it and the rocks that were already
Just
in the
amazing,
road.
a drought year,
Yeah.
1/4 inch of rain.
Yeah,
killed it.
yeah, it did, so we would ask, that you just modify that resolution to open the top end.
Did Bill Donnelly send you a list of the questions that he had when he thought we were considering opening the bottom half of 386?
He did not send me that letter, but I visited with him afterwards, and
Because I can forward that to you if you want,
would,
just for
and
your records.
we're keeping him in touch as
Yeah.
well, I know, as you guys are.
Okay. Counselor, what do you think? Do we need to amend that resolution? Do we need to write a new resolution?
I'd have to take a look at it, I don't remember.
Yeah, I didn't pull it up
in
either,
detail,
I'm
so
sorry.
I'll take, but I can have something for you for our next meetings next week to either amend it or just do a new resolution.
Okay.
So when it's not access to vehicles, it's just foot and horse?
No, well, on us, it'll be foot and horseback, but the piece that is on the county is in good shape. It's just the first couple 100 yards off of Highway 165
Right.
going east. That's in really good shape. It's not impacted by the fire, that first little bit.
So it will be open to vehicles.
we're opening it up into the forest so people will get to the forest.
Okay, but we're not specifying a distance, it's like an open for the first
Yeah.
half mile or anything else? just-
Your whole piece will be open on that west end, so we're gonna open a piece of ours that we can, so we can create somewhere for people to at least park
Okay.
that's safe. It's
And
not
then there'll be
in-
a gate, so you can
Yeah,
pass
right.
the gate.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Front
originally, I mean, initially, our county road portion will be open down to a
to the
detriment
forest
for
boundary.
you, either a gate or boulders or some block.
Yeah, so, but all of that structure will go on Forest Service
Okay.
lands, all those.
And then camping there or no?
Yeah, we're gonna allow camping there at the upper end. We've had some discussions, if we do open the lower end, we may not allow camping on a certain stretch of that if we ever do, because just the dangers of water and soil moving are a little more down there. So, but the upper end is not, where the parking lot will be is not impacted by the fire on the upper end.
So if the Forest Service position changes on the lower end of 386, we'll be having this conversation again.
Correct.
Yes, yeah, we'll continue to monitor it and to look at it, but right now it's just too unstable in there.
Okay. So, gentlemen, I would guess that we could table this until we get some direction from council, or do you want to approve? Do you guys have a time schedule? I'm sorry. ASAP,
So
I'm assuming.
for the public,
Yeah.
turkey season starts April 13th. And that's just
Yeah.
purely a public
Well-
convenience they would appreciate it, but it's not, it's been closed now for 2 years, so.
We'll put it on an agenda for next Tuesday or Wednesday,
Yeah.
and I'll have something.
That'd be all right. I hate to, we could make the motion, but then we may end up having to reword it or change it.
I don't think we could even make the motion, because we have this as a discussion, not as a consideration. Just a point of order, semantics, but we like to follow the
Sure.
rules.
Yeah.
So it's appropriate for next meeting or
Yes,
whatever.
that's all I'm trying to say. And that'll be plenty of time to get those turkeys' feathers ready to go.
Yeah,
Can I
great
tell them
point.
who's really wanting in there?
I don't know.
I think he does.
So, yeah, I think
Sheriff.
we can put that on the agenda for second. That'd be great. April 2nd, we'll,
You say the second or the third?
Third, isn't it?
well,
You don't want
see you
Oh, I-
later.
that's
She
right,
went
we
like
got
this,
the
he said
second.
second,
Yeah,
that's
the
why I
second,
asked.
yeah.
Yeah.
We're on the third.
Could we, Ms. Meredith, put the word consideration instead of discussion?
Thank you.
That's a point well taken too. We need to be a little more clear about that. So if that works for you guys, we will take that into consideration on April 2nd.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, you bet.
Good job, guys,
Thank you.
thanks.
Yes, sir.
So on the lower end then down there off of 386, so, or 87 rather, so, because we'll have people going in there, whether it's open or closed, for turkey season. Is it gonna be closed to any access at all? Is that the plan?
The county resolution now for that piece of road says you cannot be on that road, and that was similar to what ours was on the forest piece. So that, we're assuming will stay in place, and there will be no access on the lower
Okay,
end.
so no
No
walking
walking
in or
on the
anything.
road, no,
Okay.
yeah, they'll need to go to the upper end
Okay.
and get in there that way. That's how the current resolution is read, is no, nothing.
All right, thank you, Destiny. Welcome. We're glad to have you. Come anytime.
Thank you.
Always welcome.
You bet.
I appreciate that very much, thank you so
All right,
much.
thank you.
By the way, that's a good point. The more you talk to us about, and come and talk to us, like when you're burning and stuff, because people call.
Oh, yeah,
We got a fire, the forest on fire.
No, and I think our folks do a great job communicating through the sheriff's department, they post on Facebook too, but, yeah, we're always happy to keep you updated as to what we're doing.
If anybody doesn't know, it's kind of cool, but so Destiny is actually Mike Calvin's daughter, so it's kind of cool.
Thank you very much.
That's pretty neat. We have someone from Custer County that's
That's right.
a ranger.
With consent, gentlemen, I'd like to take a 5-minute recess.
I'll consent.
I didn't want to embarrass you, Destiny, but.
We're in recess for 5 minutes. Don't look at me like that.
Some of it goes to this
Fairly well. Could you give a
Sorry, how did you get to that?
No, I know, Randy.
It's about this time. They said,
We're good, ma'am?
Bring them home.
Thank you. Meeting will reconvene. Let the record show it is 10:37 a.m. After visiting with Counselor Smith, he asked if we would be okay with changing the order of the last two items on the agenda. By consent, gentlemen, are you all right with moving the consideration of the water turning up one item, as am I? So with that, the next item of business is consideration of obtaining legal counsel concerning water rights. Commissioner Prince, I believe you requested this on the agenda. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Without going into a long dissertation, which I have been known to do, and I'll try and speak up because I know I have that issue also. We all know, I think we all know where we are in this process. Just the highlights are, behind our back, the Upper Arkansas Water Conservancy District filed a amendment to the Blue Line, which encompasses a significant area of Custer County. We had no concept this was being done. Our representatives at the meetings up the Upper Arkansas had no idea this was being done. Next thing we know, thank you to San Isabel, and I'm pointing to this pool, we learned that a augmentation adjustment was filed with District 2 Water Court. When we found out about this, you could have seen smoke coming out of our ears. How could you do this without even discussing it with our water rights holders? So we sent a letter to the water court. We notified Upper Ark that we were extremely disappointed and that we do not support this. We asked them to reconsider, and Chairman Flower spoke to them with us and many of you there. They voted at the following meeting. We asked that they remove Custer County from their augmentation adjustment plan that was submitted. And they, Bill Donnelly made a motion to remove Custer County. It died for lack of a second, so there was not even a discussion. To say that we were upset is beyond words. We all recognize that water is the most important commodity next to air that we have. You die fast without air than water. Water is a close second. Okay? And we are very concerned with what the motivations are for Upper Arkansas with the water, that they would have the right. Under this plan, they take over the legal rights to augment the water within this blue plan, this Blue Line plan. It also gives them the right to sell water outside of our county. This can be done once they have this authority by the court. They have the right to do that without any say from us. We turn around and learn that X amount of water just left our valley. This is totally unacceptable, as you all know. We asked them, Commissioner Flower, Chairman Flower, made an appeal to remove us. The next meeting they voted, and as I said, there was no second. And as I said, I would try not to ramble, but that's where we are today. There was, after the meeting, after the vote, many people left. Commissioner Kanda and I stayed to the end, and they asked us to speak. Actually, Commissioner Kanda asked to speak, and he did, and then I was asked to speak. I didn't ask to speak, they asked me to. I think we made it very clear to them that the plan was that Custer County is not going to roll over and die on this and just say, well, that's the way it is. understanding that Custer County itself does not have Custer County Commissioners, the county itself doesn't have a dog in this fight because we are not water right holders, and only water right holders have a right to protest and oppose the plan that was submitted from the Upper Arkansas Conservancy District. 54? I don't want to say people, entities, including St. Isabel, the town of Westcliff, the Board of County Commissioners, and many of our water rights holders filed a protest with District 2 Water Court, saying that we are opposed to the plan. It is not in Custer County's best interest, and we did that because that is a true statement. We feel it is not in our best interest. We want to control our own water. We don't want them to. So, once they failed to move forward on this, Upper Arkansas failing to take us out of the blue line adjustment they're trying to make that they filed, and not even after discussion, there was no discussion, it was just, I mean, it's just inconceivable to me. We sat back, I sat back and I said, what am I going to do? And I brought it to my commissioner, I said that I feel that we need to continue the fight, which of course they are totally in favor of. So I would like to move that Custer County, even though we are not involved in the suit itself, because we are not water holders, but we represent all of you, and every one of us drinks water. I would like to move that Custer County authorize an initial up to $4,000 to hire an attorney who is versed in the water law to come in and explain to us, hopefully in an open meeting. It will be an open meeting, and I promise I mean hopefully in an open meeting. What rights do we have at this point? What can we do to preserve this? Can we, and these are just things to ask, can we form our own conservancy district? Can we move from Upper Ark to a different one, a more friendly one, a more congenial one? Can we just get out of water conservancy altogether? These are things we don't know, and we need people who are water rights holders to be involved in this discussion. The three of us, while we've learned a lot about water in the last 2 months, I venture to say are not experts. I certainly am not. So when Ms. Bubas asked earlier about the person we had, a consultant, that was just to kind of get us up to speed so we even understood what we're talking about. The term augmentation was even, I think that means trading water, but I didn't really know. And when you try and Google it, it doesn't really explain it all that well. So we had an expert come in and help us with that. And since then, we've had multiple people. There's a gentleman in the room over there, Mr. Gulliver, Terry Gulliver. He's a hydrologist. I've spoken with another hydrologist, Velda, what's her last name? Thank you. Who, I'm sorry, I got your last name. As helping us learn what's going on. But the one who really could tell us is an attorney. This is what you can and cannot do. Counsel Smith, bless his heart, is exactly right. You don't want a generalist to do brain surgery, and water is brain surgery. So we need a brain surgeon attorney.
I will
sorry,
second the
motion.
motion.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I apologize.
I was going to second
said
it
I
if you
would do
weren't.
it. I can't help myself. I apologize.
Gonna stop.
I'm always
We can still
always
discuss it
talking
now.
to a jury. I'm sorry.
It's been moved and seconded to hire an attorney, a water attorney, with the expenditure of up to $4,000. Discussion.
Yeah, I want to reiterate a couple things because Jake hit the summary really very well. And unbeknown to a lot of people behind the scenes, each one of us have been working, hammering on the Upper Ark guys specifically, and working on what are options like the water attorneys that we've had come in or people that have been advising us. After that meeting, when people left, because I would have been in the same boat had I not known what was going on, because the way they played the game by not seconding the motion and letting it die, you know, what a waste of time. And that didn't give anybody more of a chance to say the same things or reiterate what we said in that first meeting over there. And that's why I took the opportunity and said, well, I'm not going to leave here, and I asked Jay to stay as well, because we made it clear that they were prematurely releasing this water action into the courts before anybody here had an opportunity to show injury or not. And they couldn't stand there and tell us even then, and we've since learned a few things, and I have learned this over the last 2 weeks of interviewing people. They aren't ready engineering-wise. They're finishing up their engineering and their hydrology as it's been filed. And so that's why we made it very clear that we objected to it, and in fact hit them with, you know, there's too many things. The single well owner on a 35-acre, the agribusiness that needs replenishment, and how do you do that without storage? You can't do it by saying I'm releasing water and it goes into the Arkansas somewhere else. We made that clear. You know, if you're going to file an augmentation plan, and you know, whether we like it or not, I think we're doomed to agree that we need a real plan, a good plan that we all can get comfortable with, that doesn't injure us, or we want to make it clear they can't legally sell water out of the district, but they sure can move it back and forth. So I was upset that a board that's comprised of how many people from Custer County, Fremont County, and Chaffee County, every one of those board members ought to care that when an action occurs, even if it's in Chaffee County, and it's not directly hitting us, then we just tend to hide and say, well, it doesn't bother me. It might, because that Chaffee County action might be asking for water, and they're going to say, yeah, we'll just take it out of somewhere in Custer County. That would impact us if we don't have the education and the ability to interact with it. So that's how Jay and I stood up and said, here's what it's all about. And then you can talk about the letter later, but they have responded since then, just basically saying, well, okay, maybe we ought to work with you guys. And, you know, maybe we do need to resolve those exact issues I just spoke of. So we're going to have to see where that falls out later. We can't vote to do anything right now because it's not a discussion item, but it certainly is a consideration, and so something we could discuss. We can talk about that later. So I agree with hiring an attorney to look at options, because that's what we need information.
Further discussion germane to the point of whether or not to hire an attorney.
Right.
Well done. Hearing none.
I didn't see the rabbit.
Yes, sir.
I would commend this initiative as a way of kicking off an assessment as to what a citizens or a water users group in Custer County could do to manage their own water. I think that you can't really rely on a full-time water lawyer someplace else. They cost an arm and a leg to even listen to for the space of a telephone call. But to form a legal basis for a group to manage this in the valley is a great thing.
Okay. And to be clear, we're talking about hiring an attorney to come talk with the commissioners to explore the commissioners' options moving forward, not necessarily the citizens of the county, but as a commission. Okay, yes, ma'am.
I have a colleague in Denver who practices in this area who would be interested.
That's going to be our point of contact for that.
Other public comment? Yes, sir.
Why, I don't understand where the, almost, it sounds like almost hostility is coming from. I mean, why are they taking this kind of an action? Any ideas?
Well, it's
a lot of history.
all surmising, because no one will actually, in my opinion, state the facts. So we're left to surmise what is or isn't happening, and is it happening in open meetings behind closed doors. I sat on that board as an ex officio member and have done since I was elected. My opinion is that they're certainly operating outside of the Colorado Open Records Act. I don't know how they can get to where they're at today. Well, let me rephrase that. I know they cannot get to where they're at today without operating behind closed doors. They will not admit that. But clearly I've read every set of minutes from December of 2017, and it is not reflected in the minutes of the actions that they've taken. So they've been challenged on that. Obviously, that caused some hate and discontent on their part. They don't like to be challenged. They've made that very clear. They operate outside of Robert's Rules of Order. The chairman fairly well has open rein on how those meetings are going to be conducted, who's going to speak, who's not going to speak, and what they're going to speak about. Clearly, they've made decisions outside of that meeting without a vote of the board of directors because there's no record of those votes, but the decisions were made anyway. So I think, to answer your question, I think they've got this angst because we as a county have said, hold on, what you're doing is wrong. It doesn't represent our county. We don't trust you. You didn't ask the citizens. You're taking $57,000 of our tax money in 2018, and you're not listening to a darn thing we have to say. And they didn't like hearing that. The commissioners have been at 2 of those meetings. Citizens of the county, water right holders have been at those meetings. And certainly I think the general consensus would agree that they just don't want to hear anything we have to say.
Are they doing the same thing to the other counties?
No, the other counties are in support of this augmentation plan because they clearly stand to gain from
they're at the spin.
Water use. Chairman Cinderhoff certainly indicated to me that he was going to do everything he could to fight for this aug plan. I said, I don't believe I can support that. That was the end of our conversations, and then he turned to Commissioner Kanda and had conversations with him, and we can talk about that later when we get to this letter thing. But I think he realized real quick he wasn't going to get anywhere with me. Commissioner Prince has sat in that seat as an ex officio member prior to me being elected, so he's got some experience and background as well. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but it's not an easy question to answer because nobody will say up front and honestly. They'll talk about it outside of the meeting, and I've had conversations. Mr. Ruska's had conversations with board of director members up there that don't line up with what's going on in that meeting. So, yes, sir. Public comment.
Sure.
Well, the nuts and bolts of to answer part of your question there is the Wet Mountain Valley is the only place left to get water for Upper Ark. They've got all the rest, and they need to expand development. But the water will go downhill. So
to whom do they report?
No one.
Who?
Legally, I guess they would answer to the Colorado Water. I looked to Jerry Livengood, who's our water commissioner here. By statute, they have to fall under the guidelines that are set up in the statutes, but they don't report to anybody. Yes, ma'am.
Since there's representation to the board that is contrary to the interests of the county, is there any action being taken to look at replacing individuals that currently sit on the board?
Good question. Yes, there is.
How does that process occur?
Chairman Cinderhoff's term, his current term expires May 31st, 2019. In order for someone to be considered for a seat on the board of directors, though that name and letters of support need to be submitted to the district, the chief judge of the county that the seat is held in. And there is movement to explore that.
Yeah, every board term member, every member has a term, and they all are appointed by a judge, and they get to be reappointed or challenged by anybody.
But they could be recalled.
Don't know if that answers your question.
Okay.
So they are a tax-supported district, obviously, from the 5 counties that are part of that. Arkansas Water Conservancy District. So we are in discussion, sir, Mr. Livengood, of the motion was to hire a water attorney not to exceed up to $4,000. to explore the options that the commissioners have moving forward in regards to water case 3076. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
go ahead.
Do you have any input on whether or not the commissioners should be spending money on hiring an attorney to find out what our options are?
I think it would be in the best interest of the commissioners and the constituents to at least hire an attorney to get that input that you need to make that decision. I really do. You need that expertise that of giving you what your options are, I think.
Personally, I agree. I spend a lot of time probably making rash statements that in a court of law probably wouldn't hold up. So I have my beliefs about this, but that doesn't mean they're legal. That doesn't mean they'd hold legal water. So I think back to another issue we've had here in the last 5 or 6 years in this county that involved attorneys and spending a lot of money to settle a lawsuit. And I don't hear a whole lot of positive about that. And I'm talking about the whole
Suck down a rabbit.
fiasco down in Wetmore over road rights. It's easy for everybody to get all wound up after the fact. You should have never done that. You should have never spent that kind of money. And I don't want to get into that same situation here. If this community and the constituents, and particularly the water right holders, feel like the commissioners should expend county dollars to do something based on legal advice, then that's fine with me. I don't mind doing that. I just don't want to, as commissioners, don't want to go off on some tangent that we think we should be doing without legal advice and input from the community, which obviously is why most of you are here today. So that's important to me. Yes. Before you speak, ma'am, we need to clear the air. And that would be the pronunciation of your name, because I've heard that about 4
My name is pronounced Valda Terrades.
Valda, not Valda, not Velda, not Valda.
Valda.
Okay, and the last name?
Terrades.
Terrades.
I apologize.
No, I'm not. I wasn't talking about you
No, because
particularly.
I've called you by the wrong name every single time.
So it is Valda. Okay, yes, ma'am. Go ahead. Thank you.
I was wondering if the commission had considered asking someone from Division 2 in Pueblo to come up and explain how they would administer some of the potential conflicts that could occur under this augmentation plan. And that, in addition to the attorney information, might be helpful, and that's certainly an inexpensive way to get some real
Government dollars
information.
helping us.
Yeah, I don't believe we have. I certainly have not, as commissioner. The burden of proof on all of the conflicts arising out of 3076 will be on the Upper Arkansas Water Conservancy District. They're going to have to deal with that. I'm not sure that, because now we're at the hearing phase, I'm not sure the water court would.
I'm not.
There's no way
It's
to
not
do
water
that.
court. I'm thinking of somebody like Tyner or Steve Whitty, somebody from their operation, familiar with.
I'd be very surprised that it's a lawsuit now.
Steve Whitty's retired.
Was he?
Just so
Okay.
you know, yes. Yeah. Bill Tyner, of course, is the division engineer.
Well, Steve Whitty has
What
retired.
specifically could you restate, what are you, what would be questions or hypothetically that you would feel we need to do as an engineer?
So as an example, somebody in a fractured rock setting within the blue line applies for augmentation water. Their well is capable of providing that added pumping, so they now can do outdoor use, and all of a sudden their neighbors' wells are drying up. Well, how is injury to those neighbors handled? with the fact that you have an augmented well pumping?
You ask a $64 question, you really do. Unfortunately, the only, let me choose my words carefully. The only addressed injury in a case like this is to surface water right holders. And that's unfortunate, that's very unfortunate.
And most of us here are well owners.
Yes, exactly. You're exactly right. And so the injury to individual domestic well owners is not addressed by the court system. The only rules we have in effect basically to protect well owners is the 600-foot spacing rule. So I don't know if Bill Tyner, I won't speak for him, of course, because his pay grade is way above mine. But without some very firm geology and knowing what's going on underneath the surface, I don't think that question will be able to be answered.
Don't they throw it, Jerry, at the well owner to prove their injury?
Pardon me?
Don't they throw that burden of proof back onto the well owner? Seems that's what I've heard. I don't know if that's true.
And how are you going to prove injury?
Say, dig deeper, and if it doesn't work and you keep going, where do you draw the line?
You did. It'd be the burden of that well owner who is injured to prove injury, and
that would be after the
probably impossible.
That would be after the OG plan is in place. Right now, that burden would be under Upper Ark to show that type of injury would not occur.
That's right.
Yeah, it's interesting that the opposers are charged with, I believe the wording is, prove potential injury. That is like throwing a dart and seeing where it lands. So I think your point is well taken. I think the citizens of the county need to understand that the individual well right permittees, they're not water right owners just because they have a well, are probably going to suffer as well as surface water right holders.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yes, sir.
Going back to this gentleman's question about the opposition or the bad feeling about this whole log plan, I think, the blindside deal was terrible. It was really bad. Come up with it and respond to it after the fact, after it's filed. On the surface, it looks like we're going to have way more use of it than what we've had. We're going to have the option to buy well permits, and then the replacement water goes to the Arkansas. So there's a good reason for contact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's probably, in my opinion, the most poignant part of this entire thing, that people probably, the average person in this county, I guarantee, would not understand that even though the augmentation plan is to replace depleted water on consumptive use, it's not going back where the consumptive use occurred. There's no question about that. So if that's the fact, and I believe it is, then who gains from these depletions? No one in this county that lives above Grape Creek, and you could even argue where at in Grape Creek. Well, the blue line, wherever that blue line crosses Grape Creek, anybody above that's not going to gain anything. And so once the water hits Grape Creek, I believe there's only 2 diversions, right? 2.1 pointed diversion from the blue line down. 5. So those could be protected. Go ahead.
Pertinent to this conversation, you should all be aware, Wednesday, I was in conversation with both assistant engineers and Bill Tyner, the division engineers, and brought to their attention that the existing plan, in my estimation, and I think I'm right, definitely will not prevent injury to the intervening water rights, surface water rights on Great Creek. That would be created by issuance of well permits under the current plan submitted by Upper Ark. The assistant engineer has agreed with me, in fact, and will be part of our involvement in the case as protesters from Division 2.
Mr. Rusk, would you be comfortable in sharing your conversation with the district water manager about the engineering?
Tuesday, I called Terry Scanga and said, you know, as we prepare, you file this thing, we don't really know what it is. As we prepare to challenge you, which we will, I'm speaking for myself, but I'd like to see the engineering. He said it's not complete yet. It's been filed in court. They don't even know how it's going to work yet. Yes. So any education you can get on this, legal, water commissioner, Division 2, it's going to be a big deal. You need all of it you can get. That includes legal.
I have some other comments, but I'm going to reserve those until we move to the second part of this whole discussion concerning the letter we received from their district manager. Sorry, the letter that Commissioner Canada received from their district manager. Other discussion or public comment pertaining to the motion, which is to hire an attorney up to $4,000. Gentlemen, any further discussion?
No, sir.
Mr. Canada, no. Proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye. 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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Let the record show that the commissioners have the ability to hire an attorney. Thank you. And so, Commissioner Prince also asked if we could include in this consideration, because it's not an action item, Chair allowed that to talk about a letter that Commissioner Canada received via email from their Conservancy District General Manager. Commissioner Canada, I would defer to you, sir.
Okay. I'll go back to what I said earlier. Before this even came up after that first meeting, I had gotten a hold of Cinderhoff to find out what are the options we have if it gets, because it is filed. And I told him then, you got the authority right now. You can stop the action, you can modify it, you can change it, and in fact, if there is a better plan in mind, and apparently they didn't, and Randy, you got the history on it, they tried to file at one time a plan that involved the whole valley at one point. And that would have afforded, from their point of view, storage rights, which would help augment the surface rights that are different than what we currently have, that just wash down into the Arkansas. So I said, well, why didn't you do that? Why are you doing it like you are? And what are our options to do that? And that's when I started looking at how can we get into this, whether they continue that action or not. And that would be to make sure that we are working with those guys. Apparently, they're not working with us to try to get them to understand how we didn't hear anything about what kinds of injuries, and we've been hearing a lot of it right now. There are injuries that are occurring. And you've got a good case even today, Randy, right, on Taylor Creek, that is proof in fact. So that's how the discussion came up. And so let me read the letter that came back after this last meeting when they bailed out, and then Jay and I stayed and reiterated our position and threw some examples at him, and I'll read that to you.
There you go.
You got it? Oh, that's easier. All right, and the reason it was addressed to me apparently is because I stood up and hammered him later. Here's the reaction. Dear Mr. Kanda, and this was addressed to all three of us. It wasn't just to me.
Correction, sir.
It was copied to you.
Thank you.
All right, I should say, and their board. He also copied it to their board. That's true.
Can you scroll?
Well, I thought that's what. Maybe it's not.
No.
That is.
Oh,
Look
yeah,
back
sorry,
there.
sorry.
It is too.
Yeah.
So they addressed it to
So
all.
it was
the board.
addressed to you, correct?
It was addressed to me and copied everybody because I was the guy pushing on it. During the Upper Arks March 14th board, the directors meeting, discussion took place about the district's augmentation blue line expansion. Although the board was not willing to remove Custer County from this augmentation application, members of the board did express a desire to meet with representatives from Custer County to engage in discussions about the proposed augmentation plan and issues related to potential water right impacts from augmented structures, water storage, etc. That's the first paragraph. Second paragraph is, in this conversation, you and fellow Commissioner Prince were asked to comment on this possibility. You noted that there are several areas that needed discussion, such as augmentation impacts to landowners. That was me.
Correct.
That's right. You didn't say that. I'm sorry. I don't know why he said and fellow were asked to comment.
Well, read it and then we can discuss
Right.
it. How's that?
That's good. Such augmentation impacts to landowners with domestic exempt wells on 35-acre parcels, the potential impacts to groundwater table, the potential to operate the augmentation plan in such a manner that water does not leave Custer County, because that's the big issue. The potential, that's me, an aside. The potential of providing supplemental water to agribusiness, development of storage in Custer County, and the preservation of existing, turn this up, existing irrigation water in the county. Okay, next paragraph, third paragraph. The board met this challenge with a positive response. The district director suggested several citizens from Custer County as appointed by the Board of Commissioners that meet with District Augmentation Blue Line Expansion Committee to undertake the tasks and discussion listed above. We look forward to meet with your committee as soon as possible. It is imperative to resolve not only the issues as noted above, it is equally important to develop a new relationship of trust and openness to resolve all other issues that may arise as we move forward together on all Upper Ark projects that may impact Custer County. This would be a paren for me in the future probably. This will be a long process since obtaining a decree will take from 2 to 4 years. Please contact me to arrange our first meeting. So that when did we receive this? I didn't even pay attention. Yesterday.
Yesterday.
Yeah. It was prior to that, wasn't it? Let me look.
March 28th.
Yeah, it's 28th on the note there. So to me, that tells me that they were prematurely, now they're thinking about it, right? They were premature in their release of this, and Randy had the same conversation, and I think somebody had mentioned that, maybe somebody else did, that their engineering's not complete. How can that be? Their plan all along, to me, over a 2 to 4 year period of time, is to resolve these one-on-one at a time, and that's not the way you do it. You shouldn't be doing that, to me. That's my opinion. And adjust the blue line to make you happy or to you happy. How does that not, to me, that's wrong, and it should have been. It's a public entity. We have the right for any inference, just like Tom said earlier. Where has everybody been, and how are they getting away with it behind the scenes? So that's just what the point of discussion on this letter is. I'm not sure what we need to do about it yet. We need to discuss that.
I do.
And make some.
I know exactly what we ought to do.
Discussion.
Go ahead. That's the letter.
All right. Now, sometimes I get emotional with things, and I recognize that.
What happens if I reach over and put my hand on your arm?
As long as you keep his blood pressure down.
Okay, here's the way I read this letter, and my blood pressure did go up. After they filed it, after they refused to even discuss removing us, they send us this olive branch saying, oh, now that we still have you under our wing, or we're trying to, and we're not willing to remove you, if they come to us and they said, or if they came to us and said, we will take you out of the oil plan, let's do this, get a group together to discuss it, and then put an org plan in, I would say I'm all in favor of discussion. But this olive branch to me is garbage. My feeling is the 3 commissioners should sign a letter saying, too little, too late, you are adversary, we are not gonna mend fences with you until you do one item and one item only, remove us from the augmentation plan. And I would be happy to propose a letter for the 3 of us to sign, telling them that this is totally unacceptable, that we as the committee of citizens do whatever you feel is appropriate, but the commissioners will not put a commission together to discuss anything with you until such time as you remove us from your proposed augmentation plan that's in the courts right now. And I'm sustained.
That was good.
Well, I certainly,
No,
hold on just a second. I certainly have some response to this as well. My wife says there are times, Mr. Flower, when you should keep your mouth shut.
And this is not one
This
of them.
is one of them, but I'm not going to.
Good.
There's a couple things that, and I wanted to kind of dissect this letter for clarity, if nothing else. And I think this goes back to Mr. Jarvis's original question: is where does all this come from? How is it? Why is it happening? And so on and so forth. It was clear at the last meeting on February 14th that I will speak for specifically Chairman Cinderhoff was not too impressed with the narrative that I read to them on behalf of the commissioners. And subsequent to that, turned to Commissioner Kanda, and all of the communications since then have been with Mr. Kanda.
Yeah.
It's clear he doesn't want anything to do with Commissioner Prince nor myself. This letter was addressed to Mr. Kanda. I don't have a problem with that. He's welcome to do that. I think there's some subliminal messages going on here, and I just don't want to be naive to that. But certainly, I made it clear to Chairman Cinderhoff, both privately and I think by my narrative on behalf of the commissioners, that I wanted no part of this thing. And it didn't take him long, I think, to approach Mr. Kanda. And I know Commissioner Kanda told me he had a phone conversation with Mr. Cinderhoff prior to that meeting on the 14th. And I'm not privy to what that conversation was about. It's not important. But certainly I think it was apparent that Chairman Cinderhoff thought it was time to go a different direction. So I look at this letter, and there's some things that concern me that during this March 14th meeting, discussion took place about the district's augmentation blue line expansion, not the creation of the blue line, but to expand a blue line. Now, the only blue line on the table for Custer County or the other counties involved is that blue line right there. There's not an existing blue line in Custer County. So if you talk about a blue line, we have to be assuming that's the line we're talking about. So a blue line expansion committee means they have a group of people, I've got the names of the board of directors that are on that committee, that they're already moving forward to expand a blue line that's not even in existence. That irritates me beyond normal English words. And then there's a statement in here, and I want to clarify this because I was not there. I had another appointment in Poncha Springs at 3:30, so I left. It says in this conversation, you and fellow Commissioner Prince were asked to comment on this possibility. I don't believe that's true. Now, would you say then, if this letter's from Skanga, would you assume that the words, you and fellow Commissioner Prince were asked to comment, who did that request come from? I would assume it meant the board of directors asked for these two commissioners to comment. So I'm going to ask both of you, did Chairman Cinderhoff ask you to comment late in the meeting?
No, I asked him.
Did he ask you, sir?
That is-
Commissioner for Chairman Centerhoff?
He did not.
Okay.
Commissioner Kanda asked if he could say something. Sinderhoff allowed him. And then Commissioner Kanda said, Jay, would you like to say something? And I think I said something to the effect of, I'm really
One
not
plan.
prepared.
That's right.
But I would. This is not true.
That's not
and
true.
there are some people who are sitting in this
I think
room
you
sat
stated
there and
it.
listened to it. Balda, pronounced properly, I hope, was there.
I think I was the only one.
I got up, I mean, I will just tell you, I was up and I read on the riot act. I told them they had some hell of a, excuse my French, some heck of a nerve.
You did.
For what they did, when they had just finished a very long dissertation from their attorney on conflict of interest, hang on 1 second, claiming that their chairman, Mr. Sinderhoff, had no conflict of interest, and I corrected him saying, yes, he has a major conflict of interest, and I explained what that was. And I told them that I think they should be ashamed of themselves, and I don't even remember all I said, because I was on a roll. But I was
Really?
in no way cooperative.
Was it
with
televised?
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Let him finish. Go ahead.
I'm done.
Okay.
Okay, then the point that I'm gonna make, the reason I asked for it, because I got thrown under the bus because of the discussions I'd had, that regardless of how they vote, what they're doing, we got it, we exist, we're a member. We need to figure out how to get information back and forth and get it to our citizens. That's the whole point, and that's the point that I made with it. And then Jay got up and reiterated, and I even said about being blindsided. We didn't have a clue they were gonna file then, at all. And so we made that point. And then they decide, okay, maybe in retrospect we better do some thinking of what this comes across as, and maybe they're gaming. Okay, next.
Rhoda and I did stay to the end. There were only 6 people left in the audience, 2 people from Canyon City, the commissioners and ourselves. And when Commissioner Prince stood up, part of what he said is what he just said about, we will talk with you after you withdraw us from this plan. And at that point, we would be happy to talk with you. Reflecting on the letter that you received, they're discounting that. They're trying to put Commissioner Prince in with you on this. He was very clear that he wanted to talk with them if and only if they withdrew that. It's not reflected in that letter at all. That letter is misleading based on what I observed at the end of that meeting. It does not represent what I heard Commissioner Prince say. I would agree.
Yes, sir.
Isn't this kind of a two-part deal where they're overlaying Custer County's planning and zoning for increased density, and we already have we don't need and then arbitrarily move the blue line? The water issue is one thing, and the changing of our planning and zoning laws is clearly another. I think the commissioners clearly need to make a stand on that as well.
Okay, good. Mr. Prince?
If I can respond to that, your point is well taken, and I made this point, and when I alluded just a moment ago about conflict of interest, that's exactly where I went with that. What I said was that Mr. Sinderhoff is a land developer, and the first thing anybody comes in to our planning committee and says, I'm interested in forming a subdivision, the first thing they ask is, where's the water coming from? In that blue line proposed, if it's put in place, the answer is, oh, I'll just augment it in, I'll buy it, whatever. Without it, the subdivision fails for lack of water. So there is an inherent conflict with Commissioner Sinderhoff. Your point is very well taken. This is a planning and zoning issue as much as it is and I'm using the term agriculture for farming and ranching and all of it. It is an agriculture issue, but it is as much a planning and zoning committee issue on how are we going to develop our county. And I think this ties in very, very clearly with the prosperity or the economic development plan that we're just getting ready to unroll next month. It'll be approved hopefully by the commission here. And it came out very clearly that the people in this county want this county to remain what it is, the same feel. And if we start allowing augmentation of water into multiple subdivisions, then our communities are gonna change. And that is something that we need to plan for, the commissioners, and that's what planning and zoning does. But your answer is very well taken. It is not just agriculture, it is the planning of our future that this is part of also. I think the point's well taken.
Go ahead.
The other thing, I've done a little checking with people, and part of the board members on Upper Ark have their own planned subdivisions and need water below us. And the other comment, I can't help but not make this one. The greatest thing for longevity of any well in this entire area, because we can't tell where the water veins go here, to help every well owner is the agricultural irrigation.
Right.
Because we put water back in.
Your point about planning and zoning is also a fairly poignant point. However, the one thing I give Upper Ark credit for, man, they are not stupid. That is a well-oiled machine from years of practice up there. But one of the first things they said early in this thing, Skanga said it, you as county commissioners need to be concerned about land use, and you leave the water use up to us. Legally, there's a lot to be said about that. See, we can control land use. We can't control water use because we're not water rights. We can't even argue the case. So they're not stupid by any means. They understand that. And so with that being said, I also want to tell you that April the 15th in the evening, April 15th during the day and April 16th during the evening, maybe Commissioner Prince could get those times. The Planning Commission has a meeting scheduled to look at land use again in this county beyond the 5 zones that we have. 1:30 on the 15th and 6 to 8 on the 16th. Correct. So they want to meet and start having discussion and community input about where we want this county to go in land use. And whatever recommendations they come up with, if they're anything different than what's on the books now, they will eventually bring those to the commissioners for consideration. But they really hope that they can get some citizenry input on those topics. I better not say what those topics are because it's not my place and that agenda hasn't been read. Commissioner Kennedy?
Yeah, I want to talk to you as a commissioner and as a water use holder, right now, of water rights, the beneficial use of water. I own too, and it impacts me. So it's a fine line we have to walk. We could be in a county with all the water in the world, and what governs growth is the county commissioners and what you approve and what you don't approve. And we listen to our constituency, and so here's the fine line. We got a growth plan, a prosperity plan that depends on water. Part of it does, and part of that simple growth. We want to maintain our lifestyle the way it is. Yet we heard from you guys, the citizens of the county, and we all a lot of us participate in that we want to have a way of keeping our kids here, coming back. We want to keep the ranches where they are and viable, and that's some of the dilemma and that kind of thing. So in the end, the three of us have difficult decisions to make when somebody comes. We don't have to approve a PUD just because there's water, and we don't have to approve a subdivision, and we don't have to approve an industrial park or someplace like the town wants to have some use in here. But we've got to understand tourism depends on water too. But how far do we go? And it is tough, and that's what we listen to is you all, and we've heard a lot of sort of conflict here. With we say some things emotionally, and we've got to sit back and stand back and say, well, we need some growth of some kind in order to keep the amenities we got. We've got roads to maintain clear to Albuquerque, yet we don't have the money to maintain every one of them. That kind of thought, as well as what the citizens want to have, and our views of what limited growth means. I look at it as controlled growth. And so The water thing, yeah, but we can't use the water as the tool. Well, we could say flat out, we don't want any growth at all if we want to. And it doesn't matter how much water's left. Right now, I don't think we've got, what, 3,000 residences yet that could be drilling a well?
Undeveloped lots.
You know, undeveloped lots. I don't even know what that means yet from an impact point of view. Jerry might have a better view of that. But those are on the books, and that's according to the zoning as we know it now. And thank heavens our forefathers had the insight to say, and the county modified what the state statute says. You know, the state statute, I think, lets you have 3 residences in total on a parcel, and the county limited that. 1 well, 3 things. You can't have a house with a kitchen in it, blah, 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 whatever those rules are. Those are our rules. And we can modify that to control the growth. So it is a tough one, and I don't want to hide my head in the sand when they've already got a filing over there, and I'm going to fight them and understand them to whatever end it takes, even if it's by myself going over there and saying, well, all right, so where are you on it? What do I need to get back into here as a citizen? So we've got to not let our emotions kill us and cut off our nose before, in spite of our face. But I will welcome the insight from the lawyer, any options we have to consider, and so should every agricultural business owner and surface right person. And then we team up with the groundwater people. I mean, you know, it all impacts us, just like we've heard. And I really appreciate the turnout here that helps us stand tall, both on the growth side, as well as the limited growth, as well as the water rights issue. Thanks.
I'd like to comment on your 3,000 potential dwellings here. You can compute to acre feet how much water each one of those will take individually in a year as a single family, single person, and do your math, and those numbers will soon make you realize it's not there.
You know what, John, you brought up a very good point, and I asked that exact question. What is the loss on the residential well? When you pull it out of the ground, you use it, and you throw it back into your septic tank, and there's evaporation that occurs. There's whatever that hydraulic, and I bet you Valda knows the number. But for 100, they told them the numbers I got for 100 residences, it's 10 acre feet that they have to augment back. And through the year, they told me, again, the engineer that I asked over there said during the normal year, the county puts down the Grape Creek between 7,000 and 25,000 acre feet that gets out, you know, just washes out of the county anyway. And that's because of use in the wintertime. You don't get a lot of use out of it, all the kind of things like that. So you could take the 3,000 times the 10 acre feet, where you divide, you got 100 homes, and come up with, I don't know, go through the math I did, I don't have it with me, but it's a few 100 acre feet, like you said, of consumptive use off that. What we can't have is, if that's the case, that's what's been approved already, if we can control, right now, with our zoning, it's gonna limit just that one well. Now, but you'd have 3 septic systems, so you get more use out of it. So
the argument I have on this is all of the septic systems that you're trying to claim return flow on will never make it to anywhere.
That's right. That's
exactly the other thing, if you break that down to a single family, a single person household, 60 to 80 gallons a day, and do your math, and then multiply it 365, and then your numbers, you will come up with an incredible amount of acre footage that you're pulling out of the ground.
Right. And you don't know, it doesn't go anywhere once it's in the septic system.
This other, after it gets on the surface, that's fertilizer. You're taking water out of the ground, and she's going to lose her well, he's going to lose his well.
Yeah, our plan calls for augmenting wells at 1/10 of an acre foot. That's 35,000 gallons. So, again, get the calculator out. If we have 3,000 undeveloped lots in the county, nobody could say if and when those are going to be developed, but I would guess the majority of those undeveloped lots lie east of Grape Creek. in my opinion. So,
That if you do the gallonage, like you buy water from a Ferrari, on a single family, it will not make 2 years of water for that individual if they got the real volume of water.
and the augmentation plan, augmented water would be for
In perpetuity.
So it's for the rest of the life of that property.
Right.
Right.
They're gonna
Now,
augment it one time for 35,000 gallons.
I know on wells that I pull for stockwater wells, some of them have lost 60 feet of static level to this point. So, just with the wells we have.
I want to follow up on my thoughts about this letter. Yeah, I'm going to direct this to you eventually because I'm a little confused. Skanga says, in the second sentence, he says, you, obviously talking about Commissioner Canada, you noted that there are several areas that need discussion. This is the point I want to bring up, such as augmentation impacts to landowners with domestic exempt wells on 35-acre parcels. I think I get that, but he certainly doesn't talk about the impact on anybody less than 35 acres.
Right.
Which are probably hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of wells in this
Right.
county.
Yep.
Our issue is not with 35-acre parcels as far as potential injury and potential pressure on land use. I don't think. I mean, it would be included to that, but obviously the state has recognized, and they continue to believe, that giving well permits on 35 acres is not going to cause an issue. I take exception to that. Eventually, I think it's going to catch up with us. But Skanga certainly doesn't talk about any 2, 5, 10-acre parcels which we're inundated with. So I thought it was interesting that he mentioned exempt 35-acre
I think the
wells.
only reason he did that is because that's what I mentioned. He's trying to tie it, but then he says et cetera, because I did say there are other issues. We don't know what the impacts are. I mean, there's lots of things that this thing, we're in the dark about. Period. Like you brought up.
And my comment was, I don't even want to discuss this until you remove Custer County from the log plan. Then let's sit down and let's discuss all of this. This was nonsense. You have a question about it.
Okay, hold on just a second, sir, and I'll get right to you. He goes on to say the district director suggested several citizens from Custer County, as appointed by the Board of Commissioners, meet with the district's augmentation blue line expansion committee. He did, in fact, say that. No question about that. My point is, I agree with Commissioner Prince. I certainly will not serve on an augmentation blue line expansion committee, and I won't be recommending anyone else to do that either. Mr. Ewing, yes, sir.
Yes, I wanted to comment as ordinary citizen that it seems to me that any kind of response to this letter, other than the harsh tone that Commissioner Prince indicates, would be an acquiescence to our being rolled over. So I would encourage the commissioners with haste to make that posture clear for your constituents.
Okay, point well taken. That being said, Ms. Meredith, with consent by the commissioners, I don't need consent, but nonetheless, I would request that you also add on August the 2nd, consideration of drafting a response to April, sorry, what did I say? Consideration of response letter to Upper Arkansas Water Conservancy District.
Okay if I write something for
I would
discussion at that morning?
love to see that, yes, and Commissioner Canada had some
Yeah,
comments.
Mr. Chairman, I want to correct something you just said,
Okay.
because it was inaccurate. They, from the way I interpret this, they're not asking us to serve on their blue line committee. They're asking a group of commissioners, or people from the citizens from the county, to go over there and fight them, or discuss it. And not, that's my, but listen to my, I'm going to put my words in, because that's, I want to fight them with facts, and you show me why it's not going to impact me as a water owner. See?
So
So that's what it means.
All right, so let me
If they want to talk to us.
And here's why I said that. He does say specifically, suggested several citizens from Custer County as appointed by the Board of Commissioners. The first sentence in the last paragraph says, we look forward to meet with your committee as soon as possible. You can say whatever you want. He expects us to appoint a committee to go up there and sit with him, and that doesn't fly. It's not a group of citizens. They wanted a committee. I will go in turn right here in the front first.
That was the offer that was made.
What was the offer?
The offer was that there would be a small group of people that Commissioner Kanda could interact with them. I did not hear him say expansion of a Blue Line committee. He did suggest a small committee of people. My experience is having a small committee of our people meet with a small committee of their people plays right into what they do. They're trying to sort us off from the herd. It should be an open, public. If they're going to do it at all, everybody should be at the table.
But my point was that he didn't expect just some citizens. He references a committee from Custer County to meet with their Blue Line Expansion Committee. Not to be a part of it, to meet with them. That's all I'm saying. We'll go in the back, Valden, and then I'll get right to you.
And my whole opinion of it, the committee would be, it's a token that means nothing, that has no power, that would be a total waste of time.
Right. Yes, yes, ma'am.
And to build on that, it's premature in the absence of any of their science or engineering.
Engineering report. Yeah. Commissioner Canada, with all respect, mentioned, we got to be careful that we don't operate on emotion. I'll get emotional about this and won't apologize for it. I may say stupid stuff while I'm emotional, but this gets me fired up. I just don't like their whole operation. Now, is part of the way they act in response to how I personally have? Yeah, probably. Probably have. I don't ever hear anybody get up and tell that board of directors that they don't like what's being done. Nobody's ever challenged them while I've been on that board.
Thank you.
And so I'm sure part of it is, I don't want to say our and throw a blanket over these guys, but the counties may be at fault for firing up some of this. But I make no apologies for that either. I'm blaming you. Blaming you.
Yeah, he got pretty vicious, didn't he?
Well,
so
I am passionate about this issue. I mean, beyond words. How dare they go behind our back and take control of our water, because it hasn't been said this morning, but I'm going to say it right now. If that plan is approved, they have the right to move our water outside of Custer County, sell it, and buffer their coffers, of which they have a nest egg of over $2 million sitting in the bank right at this moment. So yes, I care very much about this. I care about his water, your water, his water, and everybody else's water in this county, and I'm not going to go down without a fight.
And that's good. But recognize any water owner can sell the water out of this county, and we need someone to help us fight.
And therein lies the initial discussion of, let's get someone who can tell us legally what is our
are the
rights.
options, because it's bigger than Upper Ark, I think.
Yeah.
Further public comment? Yes, ma'am.
One other thing, as you talk with your water attorneys, there are options to form a sub-district, and it would be useful to find out what structures, what water rights could come with the formation of a separate sub-district.
Okay. I think those would be pertinent questions.
Obviously. And just one thing. Mr. Culliver is a hydrologist. Wasn't here when I mentioned you earlier today, when we met last week. But his comment to me, which I think is very pertinent, and I'm not a water person, I'm in my diapers in the water. I'm learning, okay? That's what I'm trying to say. But what I mean by that is, one of the questions, which obvious is, we don't even know what we have. We don't know what's down there. We need to figure out, if we can, what are we dealing with? And that just makes perfectly good sense to me. So I just wanted to make that comment, that this is all, I mean, this is not a question for today and Upper Rock today. This is for the future of Custer County, and I don't mean to be here waving the flag rally, but this is really, really important stuff. And Mr. Lineker shook his head as if he said yes, so I'm assuming he's not fighting me on it.
Okay, further public comment before we move on? We have one more agenda item to deal with before we, there'll be another public comment session at the end of the meeting, prior to the end of the meeting. Thank you guys for your input.
Thank
We
you all
appreciate
so
it.
much
thanks a
for
lot.
coming and supporting this.
Yes, so a couple questions. I've got one question for the group and as well as the commissioner. If we, in fact, employ an attorney, commissioners, I would ask you this. It's really not a public question. Do you want to handle that during a regularly scheduled commissioner meeting? Or would you prefer to handle any conversation with an attorney during a workshop?
Well, two good points. Are we asking more than one to get the best attorney, or are we treating it like a contract? And secondly, we probably should handle it.
I'll respond to both of those. Okay, yours first, Bill. I
You
have
get some
the utmost faith in our council to advise us on which way to go.
Okay, good.
Stop it right there. Whatever Clint says to me is what I'm going to do. My second point is, I would prefer to do this in a workshop discussion, but I don't feel that there are other agenda items I have to get through. I'm rushed.
You get more people to come in a different room.
So, yes, I personally would prefer to attend a workshop so that the public certainly is invited, but we don't feel that we have 6 more agenda items to fill that day.
We can address that then when we do actually, if we do decide to hire an attorney, we can deal with that. Yes, ma'am.
Do you not have to put it out to bid?
No, $5,000 or more.
I thought it was
Not for professional services.
So Commissioner, or Councilor Smith, you would engage in trying to determine who you might recommend to us?
Well, I already talked to Randy Rusk. He's used the same person for 25 years, and that lawyer who's out of Colorado Springs represents a lot of other people invested that have water rights, and
certainly would know.
And I think and what Randy told me was that this person knows his water law, would not necessarily be the best choice if there was actually some kind of a courtroom proceeding, but you're not at that point, and the county wouldn't really be involved in that as a party anyway. So, his attorney is a gentleman named Steve Munson out of Colorado Springs, and I would certainly defer to him. The water lawyers I knew have all died. I don't know how that happened.
I want to throw out one more thing.
They go through meetings like this.
The courts have reached back out to all the opposers and requested some input on the best dates for the first hearing on case 3076. I personally responded back, and that was the dates they have now narrowed it down to are May 8th, May 15th, May 22nd, May 29th. Those are all 7 days apart. And then June 5th. This is for the status conference on 3076. So if you were interested, if you were an opposer, you should have gotten this. But if not, I can circulate those dates, and they did a survey. I'd be remiss, I'd have to go back a few emails to find out what the survey actually was. But anyway, the status conference for this case is pending the court selecting a date. So.
And that's in Gunnison, right?
No, that is in Pueblo.
Oh.
Yeah. Division 2 Water Court. And it'll actually start, it looks like it will start maybe with the referee, but yeah. So
you'll send out some kind
I
of public
can, yes.
announcement?
And if we could put that on the county website. I've got a fairly extensive distribution list, but that's no guarantee that you're on it either. So if you'd like to be on that, if you'll just jot me your email down, you're not on my list either. So if you guys want to do that before you leave today, I'll add you to that distribution list.
I'd also like to see it on the
county website. Can you just mention it to Vernon and have him get back with us and we'll.
Well, once we have a date.
Oh, once we have a date, yeah. So, there's 5 dates that they're considering right now, so. Anything else, gentlemen, on the water issue before we move on to the final public comment? Okay, public comment? Any and every. Yes, sir.
Wait a minute, we got another agenda.
Oh, that's right. Good night. Go ahead, sir. Does it pertain to water?
Was your question to pick a date that you would have your initial conference with them?
It's when they're going to schedule the first status conference.
Hearings.
They've reached out to everybody and said, what date would you like to have it on? Not just me. I'm assuming everybody.
Okay. And there would probably be no reason to pick any other date other than the very latest one, wouldn't you think?
It's a good point. I went through my calendar. June 5th does not work for these commissioners because we have a conference scheduled then. This went to 32 plus about 12 more, so it was to the opposers. So they're going to select a date based on the input they get through that survey. Because I had an opposer email me and said, what am I supposed to do with this email? I said, you respond, jump online, get on that survey and complete it.
I'll just think
let me see if I can find it.
And give your legal counsel more time to prepare.
Yeah.
I wouldn't jump on the early dates myself.
Yeah. I had 2 conflicts. That's how I responded. I can't speak to anybody else, but let me see if I can find that.
Where'd the sticky note come from also?
I think she wrote it. Oh, Bill wrote it, okay.
Bill. 325,850 gallons in an acre foot of water.
There's 300 and how many thousand?
325,000.
That's good.
Rough, give or take a few, 850 gallons in 1 acre foot of water.
Okay, good.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
But Jerry, does that include if they're growing marijuana? Because think about that.
No.
What about
That's just this is just a metric. This has nothing to do with what you're doing.
No, but I'm saying, what about the water usage if somebody comes in on a 1 acre lot and starts growing marijuana?
Oh yeah, that's another consideration.
No, but look at the water intake on that.
Yeah,
he was just asking.
I was just asking what an acre foot, how many gallons in an acre foot, that's all I care.
Yeah. The largest consumer of water that's an agricultural crop is corn. I can't speak to marijuana because I don't know nothing about that.
Might be more.
Well,
we can find out.
It's very thirsty.
Yeah.
It uses a lot of water.
Yeah.
Well, 3,000 homes at as John alluded to, 60 gallons a day.
Right.
In a year, that's 66 million gallons of water.
Right. And currently,
roughly.
We didn't say this today, currently Upper Ark owns 99 acre feet. So you divide that by 1/10 of an acre foot, that's 1,000 homes, that's it.
They own 99 acre foot of water.
Sorry, I did not clarify that. Within our district, within the blue line portion of Custer County.
That they generate from this county.
Right.
Greatly larger numbers that they own themselves in other basins.
And they can transfer water up here to satisfy waterlog plans, correct?
Correct.
Because it doesn't have anything to do with Custer County. Where does that satisfy come? On the Arkansas River. It doesn't have anything to do with Custer County. So
that 60 to 80 gallons per single person
does
not include. You can go online and find out what a horse takes and everything on top of it.
Consumptive
It magnifies a lot.
It's consumptive use of whatever you're doing.
okay, we're going to move on. I know the only reason you guys came to this meeting is our last agenda item, so. All right, well, thank you. So we have one more agenda item, and Sheriff Farley, I'm getting ready to turn the floor over to you and Mr. Prince, and that is a consideration of ordinance 19-01, regulating marijuana.
You have to listen to Clint.
Oh, well, I don't know about it. You may not have to. So, with that, we will move forward. Would you like to come up? And I'm gonna turn the floor over to Commissioner Prince because he was the one that volunteered to meet with some concerned citizens and review and possibly amend the marijuana ordinance 19-01. Commissioner Prince.
Thank you, sir. I'll try not to argue too much, but I don't promise anything. As you know, we had a group of concerned citizens who came in when we were getting ready to pass this ordinance on the second reading a couple of weeks ago, because they felt that it unjustly impacted their right for their personal recreational marijuana, and in one case, as a marijuana for kids. I'd like to just publicly state, I am totally opposed to any marijuana whatsoever, any shape, form, or whatever. I just want to publicly state that it has nothing to do with what I'm about to say.
I'm going to try to hold you to that, sir.
You will never see me with marijuana, I promise. Okay, the other side of this is they did voice some concerns that I felt they had no input into this ordinance. The ordinance was originally promulgated because the sheriff wanted, and I only speak up if I don't mean to put words in your mouth, wanted more teeth to deal with these larger marijuana grows that we have. So he asked council to prepare something. Council did, and during the second reading, this group came and said, "Whoa, this is impacting us very adversely." I offered to meet with them, and I did on several occasions. Several of you were there, Sheriff, some of them you were not. They expressed to me that, in fact, they offered to make what we were proposing much stricter in some areas. They offered to register themselves as in-home growers for personal use, and on and on. So they were trying to be responsible, if that's possible, with marijuana. I don't even know. Anyway, bottom line was, we were changing, the suggestion from the sheriff was to change the ordinance which allows 6 plants per person in each resident to 12 plants per household. Is that right?
Correct.
Right. The issue was, I had never even seen a plant growing. I know you have, Mr. Chairman. We had it in a tiny 10 by 10 area, and apparently that wouldn't even hold 1 plant. So the suggestion that they could have up to 12 plants was just not feasible. I met with them, I met with the sheriff, and I said, "Sheriff, what they're suggesting," I made the changes that they suggested. I gave it to the sheriff, and the sheriff met with us and said, the real question was, "Sheriff, can you live with this? Is this going to accomplish what you want to do and still be within the confines of the law?" And the sheriff came and said, yes. So I made some modifications to 19-1 and sent it to council, which the sheriff has looked at, I've looked at, council modified some of the things that I changed, and I appreciate that. And I think, Sheriff, why don't you speak about if you feel this accomplishes what you want to do, because I felt that they were comfortable, they thanked us for hearing their voice.
Sure. So yeah, I think, and I think you have the right interpretation or the right representation of what happened. So in the readings, they did bring up a few points that were valid. I thought, whether I agree or disagree, again with the way the law is written is irrelevant, right? That's the way the law is, and so yeah, I think it does basically meet those parameters. We did change some language. I mean, again, for example, the size of the building really really has no effect on how we go about doing our job, whether it's a 40,000 cubic feet building or a 100 cubic feet building. It's really irrelevant. So that doesn't affect us. Some of the wording, and I think that the key component here is right, that this ordinance doesn't go after, the medical marijuana, industry and caregivers and that type of thing, and so we did rewrite it to get that out of there, because again, that's controlled and regulated through the state and how they go about doing that, so that doesn't really negatively affect the way we go about doing our jobs. So I do think that in the end, the ordinance is going to allow us to be as effective as we can be, and won't have any negative effects on us, and it does allow folks that are trying to do it in the right way and grow for personal use, be it medical or recreational. It allows them to still do that within the confines of the Constitution.
Can you speak to your concern about the use of compressed flammable liquids?
Yeah, so when you start talking about, and that was one of the changes that I suggested we made, because I'm sorry?
I was kind of surprised you took that out.
Well, and the only reason I did is because we've had 2 or 3 questions come up. Also, now I can't use propane to heat a building where I'm growing marijuana in or whatnot. That's gonna, and so those questions are gonna come up, and that was not the intent of that section. That section there is when they're trying to strip the THC out of marijuana to make edibles and those types of products. That's or goodies. Yeah, that type of product. That's a very delicate process and can be extremely dangerous if not done properly. And so that was I believe it's section 5, or is it section 5?
I think so.
So that was the intent of that section, was to say, listen, so you cannot process marijuana with the use of flammable liquids. It might be 7. I don't know.
No, it's 5.
It is 5. Okay. So the whole point there is that we don't want you processing marijuana with flammable liquids, meaning butane, or they do use propane a little bit, but butane is the primary or alcohol, and so there's been some communities that have had pretty large explosions and fires because of that, and people are doing it without the proper ventilation and so forth. So that addresses it without, because I don't believe they really use propane to strip marijuana. That's, I mean, you want to talk about asking for a big explosion, but I'm never surprised by some of the things we see. But I don't see the point in putting in the growing or cultivating, because they're not. That's just, who cares what they're heating their building with to grow it or to cultivate it? It's that processing. Right.
Yeah, I thought it was part of the processing. So yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah, so that's the only reason I made that suggestion, is to eliminate, and what I'm speaking to is, in that section, we eliminated growing and cultivating and only put processing, because that's where the true danger comes in, and that's the point of that section.
So part 1, section 4. Oh, I'm sorry, section 5, use of compressed flammable gas products. So you're saying that maybe we need to delete the words growing and cultivating.
That was my suggestion, yes, sir.
And then leave it today without that.
Pardon?
That's out. That when we read the one that Meredith gave us today.
New one.
She handed to you. Right.
Oh, okay. Because I wanted to show you something as well, Commissioner Prince. Let me get it. So when you sent and mentioned the red line, I don't know if I ever showed you this. That is what my red line version looked like. Literally had these red lines in the left column.
Okay, there's an issue, because I use MS Word and I use Review. It actually puts a line through it.
That's what I thought you had intended. So
if you looked at mine, that's how it looked. I don't know what.
That's all I've ever seen.
I'm sorry.
So that's okay. So page.
You were very misled by me unintentionally.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. So maybe you may be used in the processing of marijuana.
Right.
Correct. Which says it may not be used, right?
It does not say that.
It says forbidden from being used.
No.
The prohibition of
Which one is
compressed
it,
gas.
Tom? Tell me the.
Top of page 4. Oh, of the new one, the
I
one
wanna look at the new
Meredith
one.
gave you.
Okay.
So not
Prohibits the use of compressed gas for processing, right? Compressed
I
gas
don't
for
see
liquid.
that.
I'm saying bottom of page 3, I'm sorry.
Yeah, bottom of page 3.
On
This
page
is-
3.
I'm looking at the
Yeah,
one.
no
that was
compressed-
from before.
Says no compressed flammable gas, butane is like butane, or flammable liquid may be used in the processing of marijuana.
Yeah.
Right, in the processing.
Processing, correct.
Right, it says it.
Because if not, you're gonna get calls and I'm gonna get calls
Right.
about why they can't use propane to heat the building.
Right.
That's what I was trying,
And I think the point's
But
well
who
made,
cares?
and I just.
that's not the hazard.
Correct.
Because they're gonna use the propane not only, especially in the grows
No issue.
that have a lot, they're gonna be generating CO2, which uses propane, they're gonna be heating with propane.
No issue.
So was there something else that you changed besides that?
Yes.
Okay.
I took out all reference to caregivers because caregiver was not something that Sheriff, and please jump in, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Sheriff Wiley was not interested in that, and he and I, we discussed it, felt that the state law concerning caregivers was sufficient. So we took out caregivers. The other thing was, enclosed versus outside. It still had to be done enclosed, but it did not have to be inside the residence. We originally said it had to be inside the residence. Now we said you could do it in a greenhouse or something, provided it's not in view of the public, and there were locks on the doors to keep kids out and that kind of stuff. Those were the changes that I remember.
Typical verbiage that falls within.
Right.
If a person has a license from the state of Colorado to grow medical marijuana, or grow marijuana to give to people that think they need
Like
it.
the caregiver or so
Yeah.
forth, yes.
That's a license deal.
It is.
Is there a number of patients that an individual caregiver can have?
Yes.
Do you know what that number is at all?
So let me think, it's, we'll have to figure out the
Okay.
plants and then go back.
Yeah.
So they're limited to 99 plants as a
Okay.
caregiver.
So divide that by-
And it's
Yeah,
like,
limits
it's
the
like
number of
20, 24, no, it's fewer than that. It's maybe 18 patients.
That per
I don't
year?
recall off the
Per
top
year?
of
I think
it.
it was
Because
less-
again, we don't really enforce the laws that have to do with that other than just reviewing it. If we know somebody's growing, is licensed to grow, we don't really get in their business much unless it's obvious they have far more than 99 plants.
Okay. Anything in this amended document that concerns you?
No, I think, we've gone over it and changed some stuff out, as Mr. Prince alluded to. So the group that we worked with, they actually proposed several things that I had to say, no, we can't do that, that's against the law. We cannot make you register, because they literally did, they said, listen, let's have everybody that grows marijuana just register with you, and then you'll know.
Yeah.
And I said, well, we can't do that, that's against their rights, and not only that, but you may not care that people know,
Right.
but there may be some people that do,
Right.
and they don't advertise it. I can assure you there are people in Custer County that grow marijuana and use it for personal, enjoyment or for treating themselves, and they don't want anybody to know. And so we want to honor their privacy and respect that, and so that they were like, oh, well, we didn't think about that. So some things like that they just offered up that, so that it was in good faith, some of the proposals they made. There were some things that they proposed were like, no, we're leaving that in and stuff. And so it was I thought it was a pretty good compromise. It was very civil, very, more so than I anticipated, but it was good. And I thought everybody came out of it on the same page.
Good. Well, certainly appreciate Commissioner Prince's work on
Yeah, it was-
meeting with those folks. And
I appreciate
Sure.
your
And also,
your work on it, Jay.
Sergeant,
Buck. Yeah, sir.
Any other high points that you can think of?
No, sir, I'm satisfied with it.
Council, where do you think we go from here? We're treating this as an amended resolution?
Well, the one thing I was kind of trapped in here during that long discussion about the water. I wanted to get back and get Title 30 and look at it. I even sent an email to Meredith, but I don't think she saw it, so. Could you bring me Title 30 back there?
Do you have a question for him specifically? Okay, would you like us to take a couple minute break? I could use one.
Sure, that's fine.
Consent, gentlemen, just 3 or 4 minutes, we'll try not
Can you
to-
order pizza, please?
No, that's Jake's department.
I thought so.
Jay does that.
Let's go with the Domino's.
Either that
And
I got a question for you.
Meeting will reconvene 12:17 p.m. Mr. Candy, you had a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a couple things and listen here and then ready to go. Under the law, Clint, can a county be more restrictive than the state law?
Yes.
Right.
Without invading the constitutional rights.
Right, and so that was what I want to make sure, and we can either be more lenient or more, we got to guard against being more, what is it, abundant or whatever we want to say.
We can't be more lenient.
That's right. We can be more lenient.
No,
cannot. Cannot, other than what the Constitution says, right? Right. Okay, that's what I want to make sure.
Well, other than what the law says, correct? When it comes to the marijuana laws, we can't supersede those.
So my issue,
more relaxed.
Right.
Yeah. So the real issue is, and I was listening to a bunch of people talking about legalizing marijuana and the impacts that's having, and an argument's being used is if we legalize it, then we can regulate it, and be. It's like heroin, you know. Heroin's used for a lot of things when you extract pieces out of it for medicinal purposes, and it's very tightly controlled. And so we keep tossing around this medical use of marijuana, and if it's really a medical use, it is a drug that messes up or interacts with the nervous system that can have an impact, and we don't really know all the things that are impacted or effects of it yet, in my view. And the state, when they set it up, I was involved in another government agency at the time, or a corporation when they set it up, and they're trying to figure out how to handle it. I'm just wondering, and I think part of the issue you had was that we had too many plants per household. It becomes a commercial grow deal. I don't think the state even considered that, if you think about it. So I think people have gotten. Is it constitutionally okay to limit that? So I'm hearing that was the right that we can.
The state recognized that was a problem, so they did.
That's how they got to 6?
They gave the statute that they gave the counties and municipalities more authority to regulate that.
Okay.
I believe it was House Bill 17, 12, 20, but I could be mistaken. But
whatever it is, I just want to make sure we can get it as tight as we can.
It allows us to bring it to 12.
Right.
That's the House bill that allows that.
And then recreational guys are not allowed to go puffing around where it really does get where kids are or all that kind of thing, or you know, it's
they're
a
supposed to
nuisance.
use it in the public.
Right. And so if we can have 99 plants that are allowed for medical reasons, how do you constrain that? Are we okay?
Say that again.
If we're allowing 99 plants per medical
the state
distributor, I know the state allows it, but we can't be more restrictive.
No.
No.
Okay.
No, you cannot. Not on a caregiver.
And it's a licensed caregiver that has the right to prescribe marijuana.
Right. So when you're a caregiver, there's a lot of processes to go through, and I would be lying to you if I told you all of them because it is very complex. But the state has a they have the marijuana regulation, so they in theory they monitor that and they interact with all of the different caregivers and those that are.
So I'll accept that. One thing that you did say that bothered me a little bit, Shannon, was when you said, well, they're medically licensed and I'm not really going to police them. I think we have to, and we don't want, because give them an inch, they'll take a mile, and get it, whatever field it is, and as long as they have 99 and no more, no less, they're okay.
Right.
I just kind of worry about that because, before you know it, it's being pushed around as recreational, and so they're leaning on that. It's okay for me to give this kid some or whatever.
No. That's not what.
Or this other.
That's not what I. What I meant was if they're a registered, and I'm just using one example because there's so many. But if they're a licensed caregiver, so they're licensed through the state, not the county. It's the state license. They're allowed to have up to 99 points. Or 99 plants. What I'm saying is I'm not going in there and inspecting that. Because first,
who does? Would it be the state?
Yeah,
sending
the state.
People around.
Right, correct. The state does. Now, if we were to get information or we were to uncover
you would want
information
somebody.
that's something different other than what they're licensed to have or to do is occurring, then that's a different animal. Then we do look into that, we do go after that. But quite frankly, if they're a licensed caregiver and we stop in and like, hey, you know, how's it going on? We'd like to just look. They're obligated to allow us to go in there and just walk around and look.
Okay.
And quite frankly, if they're not doing anything wrong, they actually, and that's what some of these guys were doing, they like to have you come in because they educate you and they teach you about how they do it and how they're following the law, because all of those plants are tracked from the seed. The seeds have little RFID type devices on them. That's how the state checks them. And so when that seed's planted in this area, then it has a little display there. No, it just has a little display with a little tag on there, so that if the state comes in, they can do their little scanner, and it shows them that this plant was a derivative of this seed. This seed came from here.
Okay.
And that's how it's supposed to work.
Okay, so I got one last question.
It's the state, so
one last issue, and that is the voters of Silver Cliff and the voters of the county said we don't want marijuana.
Yep.
And Westcliff.
And Westcliff.
And Westcliff.
And so, are these medical facilities allowed to advertise on our streets and in the county's roadways that they can do it?
Because they can't sell it. They can't sell anything in the county. All they can do is grow it as a caregiver. They're not selling it for there's no, in theory, there's no transfer of
You know,
goods.
and the reason I ask these questions because I've had a lot of people on the street saying, we came up here because this is not a county that accepts marijuana.
Right.
And so I just want to be careful because we're gonna, you know, we're showing a lot of plants here, and we're allowing this.
12, that's all we're doing.
99.
It actually.
I know it isn't, but I know that's more restrictive, and that's what we want to make sure is clear.
And I have the same, I have people come to me all the time too. Most of them want to know where to go buy marijuana, but that's another. But some of them say.
Okay, no, he knows where it is.
Well, you know, that's those conducive to some of that kind of stuff. But anyway, there are people who are very concerned about it, and I agree with you. And I say to them, the towns in the county have all said no, just flat no. However, the state legislature said we have to allow some.
Sure.
Please, don't yell at us, go to the state.
Right.
That's where the issue lies.
64, Amendment 64 and 20.
Exactly right.
Change that.
Yeah, I just want to make sure if we could make it restricted, let's do it as much as we can.
And that's what we're doing.
I think that's
what we are doing.
I think that's what this is.
So by law, a carded licensed care provider cannot sell their product to their patients.
That's correct. They don't sell.
Did not know that. So
somehow they get it.
Gentlemen, oh yeah, you're cheating yourselves out of tax revenue. That is absolutely not the truth. Because there should be no sale of marijuana in this county.
Well,
right
they're advocating that it should
I
be
know.
legalized. So I think that was the point they were making, not
so we're doing it for free?
This ordinance necessarily, but just the overall.
Yeah, he said, well, we don't want to go to Pueblo and buy.
Right.
Well, how do they make
I don't care what you want. You're not going to do it here.
They're selling
That's where
something.
they're coming from. That no one can buy it.
Books.
No one can come over here on Main
medical
Street
marijuana
and buy marijuana.
You can use medical marijuana as long as you get it for free.
Could I suggest something?
No, you could buy it.
You can buy it, just not here.
Council would like to start reading.
Well, I can read very softly, and you can talk about.
Well, that's a good idea. You could have been mumbling to yourself.
Because it has to be read twice, and we've changed it so that first reading on January 31 is out the window. I got to do a first reading again.
Right.
So if I can just plus that.
And would you like to share the reading?
I can read it out loud. Oh, no, I can read it out loud and I'll read it soft. I mean, but if you all want to talk, it's not going to bother me.
I don't want to.
No.
But I just, because it's taken.
So is this the second reading
This
then?
is going to have to be the first again.
The first, and then we're going to have to read it again.
Yes.
You can be sick that day.
So.
Yes, it's been changed, and
and
I'm not comfortable just trying to say this has been changed, this has been changed,
We
because
could record it.
it's
and
got to
then
be
next time
published.
just play.
It has to be published in the form it's going to be adopted in after the first reading.
And how far does the second reading have to be spaced from the first reading? Do you remember?
first one has to be published twice. So by the time we get it in the paper next week, sometime after reading today, then there's gotta be a 14-day period, so I could read it a second time in Wetmore, or.
14-day period, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I just have-
So,
Go ahead, Kim.
I think, sorry, you gonna say something?
So it's on the agenda that it's gonna be the second reading.
Right, and that's not correct.
No.
This is the first reading of an amended resolution.
Ordinance.
Ordinance, sorry.
The question is,
So
since
do
it
we need
says
to
second,
change
can we
the
still do it?
agenda? Yeah,
Oh.
that's what my question is. Can you still, since it was advertised as a second reading, can you still do it?
Good point.
Probably not. We're gonna be sticklers.
If you read this thing.
Nobody's ever gonna challenge any of this. We say,
Right.
let's just
No.
adopt
Right.
these changes and say we read it a second time and nobody would ever know.
Yeah, I agree we should go through the readings, but I also would support having the first reading today. Now, if that doesn't fly, then we'll postpone it.
Well, I don't see that there's any harm in doing it.
I move that we amend the agenda to change the word second reading to first reading,
And scratch the word adoption.
adoption, and scratch the
Or
word
just to
adoption.
be approval on first reading. Adoption really doesn't occur until the
Right.
second reading.
Right, that's why we scratched the word
Right.
adoption.
Did you second that?
Yeah.
It's been moved and seconded to amend the agenda by striking the words second reading and adoption on, and to insert the words first reading and approval. Discussion, public comment, hearing none, proceed to vote on the amendment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay. So,
Okay, procedurally, what I would recommend, there was an ordinance number 19-01. It was the first reading of it on January 31, and it was accepted, actually it says adopted on first reading at that time by a vote of the county commissioners. What we're doing now, and I'm asking for you to formally withdraw that first reading. It'll still be ordinance number 19-01, but if you would withdraw that and that approval, and then let me proceed to a first reading with the same ordinance
I'll
with the
move
changes.
we,
withdraw or rescind?
Withdraw.
It was never approved, so I'd say just withdraw it.
So I'll move we withdraw that, first amendment.
Okay, I'll second it. Been moved and seconded to withdraw the January 31 first reading and approval of the marijuana resolution 19-01. Discussion? Oh. Motion to withdraw is not debatable, I apologize. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay. Motion carries. Motion's been withdrawn.
All right, now with your permission, I'll proceed with the first reading of ordinance number 19-01. And this is just reading it into the record. You know, if anybody wants to leave or wander around or go out in the hall and visit, you're welcome to do that, obviously. Ordinance number 19-01, an ordinance of Custer County, a political subdivision of the state of Colorado, regulating residential growing, cultivating, and processing of marijuana in the unincorporated areas of said county. Whereas sections 14 and 16 of Article 18 of the Constitution of the state of Colorado, amendments 20 and 64 respectively, authorize persons to grow limited amounts of marijuana or to assist others in growing marijuana, and whereas Amendment 20 granted the local governments the general authority to prohibit commercial marijuana operations, and whereas with the adoption of ordinance number 13-01 on September 5, 2013 by the Board of County Commissioners for Custer County, the board, commercial marijuana operations were prohibited within the unincorporated areas of Custer County, and whereas neither Amendment 20 nor Amendment 64 permit local governments to deny individuals a constitutional right to engage in non-commercial, unlicensed grow operations, and whereas regulations of the state of Colorado pertaining to commercial marijuana operations are generally not directed toward non-commercial, unlicensed individual grow operations, and whereas this circumstance has resulted in a proliferation of non-licensed and unregulated marijuana grow operations in Custer County that present significant health and public safety concerns with multiple violations of the Custer County zoning resolution and also violations of electrical, mechanical, plumbing, and fire codes that are enforced in the unincorporated areas of the county. And whereas section 3-11-102 parentheses 2 CRS gives the board the authority to adopt and enforce ordinances regarding health, safety, and welfare issues and to provide penalties for the violation of the same, and whereas the board is further authorized pursuant to section 25-125-106, parentheses 13.5, CRS to regulate the growing of marijuana, commercial or otherwise, and whereas the board is further authorized pursuant to section 9-7-113 CRS to ban the use of compressed flammable gas and the extraction of THC or other cannabinoids in a residential setting. And whereas the board has determined that the adoption of regulations governing the growing, cultivating, and processing of marijuana in a residential setting is necessary and desirable for the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Custer County. And whereas this ordinance number 19-01 does not unreasonably impair or impede the exercise of constitutional rights afforded to citizens under Amendments 20 and 64, now therefore be it ordained by the Board of County Commissioners of Custer County, a political subdivision of the state of Colorado, as follows. Part 1, Section 1. Scope of ordinance and authority. This ordinance number 19-01 applies within the unincorporated areas of Custer County and regulates the growing, cultivating, and processing of marijuana in any lot, parcel, or tract of land by any person, including but not limited to patients engaging in such conduct for medicinal purposes or persons engaging in such conduct for personal recreational use. Section 2, definitions. The definitions contained in Amendment 20 to the Colorado Constitution, the Colorado Medical Marijuana Code, the Colorado Medical Marijuana Program, and any regulations promulgated by the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment and the Colorado Department of Revenue, as amended from time to time, are incorporated into this ordinance number 19-01 by reference, including but not limited to definitions of marijuana, medical marijuana, patient, and primary caregiver. All other applicable definitions are as stated herein. Subparagraph A. Accessory structure means a subordinate structure detached from but located on the same lot, parcel, or tract of land as primary residence, use of which is incidental and accessory to that of the primary residence. Subparagraph B. Accessory use means a use incidental to and subordinate to the primary residence. Subparagraph C. Primary residence means residence where a person by custom and practice makes his or her principal domicile and address into which the person intends to return following any temporary absence such as vacation. Excuse me just a second. Okay. I was waiting for a phone call, so.
But you're waiting for applause.
No, I just.
You're gonna get a drink of water.
Residence is evidenced by actual daily physical presence, occupancy, and use on a regular basis for domestic purposes such as, but not limited to, slumber, preparation, and partaking of meals, regular mail delivery, vehicle registration, or water and utility billing. A person shall have only one primary residence. Subparagraph D, primary use means the main use of the structure or land as distinguished from accessory use. Section 3, growing, cultivating, and processing of marijuana. Subparagraph A, marijuana may only be grown, cultivated, or processed as an accessory use at the primary residence of the person engaging in such activity for such his or her for his or her own consumption and use. Subparagraph B, marijuana may only be grown, cultivated, or processed in the primary residence where residential use is the primary use of the structure or an accessory structure to the primary residence on the same property. Subparagraph C, marijuana shall not be grown, cultivated, or processed in more than one structure on any single lot, parcel, or tract of land. Subparagraph D, marijuana shall not be grown, cultivated, or processed within the common areas of a multifamily or attached residential development. Subparagraph E, any area used for the growing, cultivating, and processing of marijuana shall be fully enclosed and locked, ensuring accessibility only by the person growing, cultivating, and processing the marijuana for personal use or for medical use, and to prevent access by children, visitors, casual passers-by, or anyone not authorized to possess marijuana. Subparagraph F, any area used for the growing, cultivating, and processing of marijuana shall comply with all applicable land use codes, building codes, and fire codes, including plumbing, electrical, and mechanical regulations and requirements. Subparagraph G, non-residential buildings or structures that are not accessory to a primary residence shall not be used for the growing, cultivating, and processing of marijuana. Subparagraph H, marijuana shall not be grown, cultivated, or processed outdoors if not fully contained in an enclosed locked structure. Subparagraph I, medical marijuana shall be governed by CRS 25-125-106. Section 4, marijuana plant limits. At any given time, no more than 12 marijuana plants as defined in Amendment 20 to the Colorado Constitution may be grown, cultivated, or processed in a primary residence or in an accessory structure on a single lot parcel or tract of land, regardless of how many persons 21 years of age or older may occupy said primary residence. This limitation, which is based on section 18-18-406, parenthesis 3, parenthesis A, parenthesis Roman numeral 2, parenthesis capital A, CRS, supersedes the statutory provision that grants to each person 21 years of age or older the right to grow 6 marijuana plants for personal use, and also supersedes the statutory provision that grants to a primary caregiver the right to grow more than 12 plants for his or her patients. Section 5, use of compressed flammable gas products and flammable liquids. No compressed flammable gas, for example butane or flammable liquid, may be used in the processing of marijuana. For purposes of this section, flammable liquid means a liquid that has a flash point below 100 degrees Fahrenheit and includes all forms of alcohol and ethanol. Section 6, marijuana activity shall not be perceptible. The growing, cultivating, and processing of marijuana shall not be perceptible from the exterior of the structure in which such activities occur, including but not limited to subparagraph A, common visual observation, subparagraph B, light pollution, glare, or brightness that disturbs the repose of others or of another, subparagraph C, undue vehicular or foot traffic, including unusually heavy parking in the immediate vicinity of the primary residence. Section 7, smell or odor. The smell or odor of marijuana growing, being cultivated, or being processed at a primary residence or in an accessory structure shall not be detectable by a person with a normal sense of smell from any adjoining lot, parcel, tract of land, public right-of-way, or building unit. Section 8, rental property. Any lessee or tenant who uses a rental property in whole or in part for growing, cultivating, or processing marijuana shall obtain written notarized permission from the property owner prior to commencing such use. Part 2, Section 1, administration and enforcement. Custer County Sheriff shall be responsible for the administration and enforcement of this ordinance number 19-01. Section 2, penalty for violations. Any person who violates any provision of this ordinance number 19-01 after its effective date commits a Class 2 petty offense pursuant to Section 3-15-402, parenthesis 1, CRS, and upon conviction thereof shall be punished by a fine of not more than $1,000 for each separate violation, plus a surcharge of $10 pursuant to Section 30-15-402, parenthesis 2 CRS. Each day during which such violations exist shall be deemed a separate offense. Section 3, penalty assessment procedure. The penalty assessment procedure set forth in Section 16-2-201 CRS shall be followed by law enforcement officers charged with enforcement of this ordinance. Pursuant to the penalty assessment procedure, the violator may, in lieu of going to court, choose to pay a fine in the amount of $1,000 plus a $10 surcharge for a violation of any provision of this ordinance. If the penalty assessment procedure is declined by an alleged violator who chooses instead to appear in the county court for Custer County and who is ultimately convicted of a violation of this ordinance in said court, then customary court costs may be assessed in addition to the fine. Section 4, disposition of fines. All fines and surcharges assessed for violation of this ordinance shall be paid to the treasurer of Custer County. Section 5, additional remedies. The remedies provided in this ordinance shall be cumulative and in addition to any other federal, state, or local remedy, criminal or civil, which may be available. Section 6, severability. Should any section, clause, sentence, or part of this ordinance be adjudged by any court of competent jurisdiction to be unconstitutional or invalid, the same shall not affect, impair, or invalidate the ordinance as a whole, or any part thereof, other than the part so declared to be unconstitutional or invalid. Section 7, safety clause. The Board of County Commissioners for Custer County hereby finds, determines, and declares that this ordinance number 19-01 is necessary for the immediate preservation of the public health, welfare, and safety. Section A, effective date. In order to preserve the immediate health and safety of the residents and citizens of Custer County, this ordinance number 19-01 shall take effect immediately upon its adoption on second and final reading as provided in Section 30-15-405 CRS. And then it goes on. Introduced, read, and approved on first reading on the 29th day of March 2019 and ordered published in the Wet Mountain Tribune and then placed with 3 commissioners to sign and for it to be attested to by the clerk. There's also on the last page the provision for the second reading, but I'm not going to read that at this time.
11 minutes and 24 seconds.
Good
Well
job.
done, sir.
Did you record it so we can just record?
It's recording right there. You can just read it next time.
No, I want to beat that next time.
You must have used to read those disclaimers at the end of the commercials.
No, I wish I could though, because you can understand what they say even though they go so fast.
Okay, thank you, sir. All in favor, or do we have a motion to approve, sorry?
I move that we approve ordinance 1901 as amended and first read on March 29, 2019.
No,
It's not as
I was
amended.
gonna say, because we're rereading
It's a
it now,
first
it's not as amended, correct?
Okay,
So it would just
correct
be.
that as first
We
read on.
withdrew the first attempt, and now this is.
I'll withdraw my second and then I'll second.
Cause you're trying to.
I second the wrong amendment first.
Let me restate it.
Please.
Oh.
Okay, I move that we approve ordinance 19-01 and its first reading on March 29, 2019.
Okay, I'll second.
Moved seconded to approve first reading of ordinance 19-01. Discussion, public comment. Hearing none, proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed nay. Motion carried. That first reading has been approved. Thank you, sir.
All right, so now Meredith, get it to the Tribune for them to publish in full again, because this is still the first reading, okay?
Came from the second-hand store.
Really? I like it.
Little box.
All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
That's some good stuff.
Really?
So
Mr.
I
Smith,
have an
thank you for your
item-
work on that, Mr. Smith. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Yep.
Thank you, sir.
I want to bring up an item under public comment, and that is a discussion of, right now, we have on the schedule for April 3rd, a workshop with the supposedly DOLA Economic Development Corporation to talk about the EDA grant status. Christy Dune cannot be here. I don't know if you just want to leave that on the books, get a report from EDC where we're at. Do you want to wait?
I think we need her here.
I think it's the opposite.
I'll listen to you first.
Okay. And I'm happy to go with whatever the consensus is. My feeling is the real question at this April 3rd meeting is to determine where we stand on this project. Are we going to continue to support it or are we not? And this is the way I'm looking at it only. You may feel differently. I want answers to those questions that we sent to them a couple of days ago. And based on those questions, you know, I may have a whole different attitude about this project. And that's an internal thing. And I would prefer Christy be involved if we decide that we're moving forward and we want her money, she ought to come in. But I think the question we're really doing on April 3rd, in my opinion only, is this a project we're going to continue to support or not?
That's a good point, and I'm good with that. However, I worry that they will be using the facts that here's what we want to do, and we need information whether they say, well, Christie says we can do it, we can borrow the money or whatever.
She said, she already told us that she doesn't have a problem with it.
Here's my perspective is that I think I'd feel good if Christie was there, but I think the point of this meeting was to find out about EDA and where we stand with them. Whether or not we move forward or not was not an issue with me. It's where are we with EDA?
You know, is that part of is that after the meeting, or when is that scheduled? Is that an item?
2 o'clock.
It's at 2, right? Is it
April 3rd?
Well, what's part of the?
It's a workshop.
It's a workshop. What is
Down
all
here.
this right up here?
That's today's.
Oh.
That's today's. So it's a workshop scheduled at 2 o'clock.
Okay, that's good.
Not a
Yeah, it's actually a special meeting.
Yeah, special meeting.
Special meeting, so
I've got it
we could
written
take
down.
action if we choose to.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so I had a special meeting written down, sorry. So, I emailed Christy, she said she had a conflict. She said, I appreciate you keeping me updated on what's going on. She didn't say she thought she had to be here, she didn't ask us to reschedule. It sounded like she was okay with not being here.
So we could make we could do something.
But the point for me was this was an EDA status report from the Economic Development Corporation. That's the way I looked at it.
Yeah, okay.
So from that perspective, I don't think she needs to be here. That's what I'm saying.
And I'm not sure me speaking personally, Deb, I'm not sure she even needs to be here at all. She already said to us, if you make that request, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't do it. She didn't say it's yours.
Right.
But, so I think what we would do is say, I think the real question for me is go, no go. If it's go, let's ask her for the money. If it's no go, then we need to make some other decision.
Okay, I think that's good. You know, there's things going on in the background. We've got the CenturyLink guys in there. We're gonna learn more today. And we've got, Silver Cliff and West Cliff want broadband connectivity and want leverage into it. Those are things that, and I know the EDC, or the, what do you call them, Custer County Economic Development Corp, will wanna, and I know they're going to all these other meetings too, as far as I know, because they wanna defend where they are. I think the more we learn, the better. And it'll help us make a decision on whether we're gonna continue with what they're trying.
Yeah, I was just targeting the EDA slant on it. So we will leave that on the books, Miss Meredith. Yep. And then, gentlemen, just, that's 2 o'clock. Commissioner's room on the 2nd, or 3rd, sorry. On the 2nd,
There is a workshop.
there is a workshop, and that's with our insurance pool for the insurance pool loss analysis. That's at 1:30 on Tuesday.
What is that, John? Did you write it?
John.
John.
Right. Yeah. And then I just wanted to publicly mention, and I know you gentlemen are certainly aware of this, that Saturday, April 6th is the health fair. We're involved in that, set up and tear down.
Jay and I are drawing blood this year.
Good. I'm glad I don't have any, so I don't have to worry about it.
Excuse me?
I'd like to see you two draw blood.
You do not want to see that.
Okay.
Actually, we're drawing money. We're cashiers this year.
That's right, you money grubbers. I gotta work, actually. I'm working this year, not standing around with my hand out. Like a politician wanting money. Further public comment?
Spring has sprung, the flowers are coming up.
Right. Hearing none, let the record show that today is March 29th, 2019 at 12:49. Chair declared the meeting adjourned.
Thank you.